Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. If you were wondering, the time is 6 o'clock. So if you're looking for City Hall, you were in the right place. We are beginning our evening with a special called session to consider a handful of items and then note an executive session that will occur after our agenda setting session. For a special called session, we require a roll call, so I'm going to ask the clerk to do that for us.
Davenport.
Here.
Parker. Here. Link. Here. Wright. Denson.
Here.
Neesmith.
Present.
Edwards.
Here.
Harrod. Thornton.
Here.
Handy.
Here.
All right, having a quorum, we are going to begin with our public hearing on SPLOST 2020. Candidate projects are in the packet that appears online, and of course, many folks in the room have had lots of conversations around the community about these candidate projects over many months. And so now it's time for citizen input on SPLOST candidate projects, the first item on our special called session. You may speak for up to 3 minutes. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the light on Clerk Spratlin's desk will turn yellow, and when your time is up, it will turn red.
Mr. Mayor, the order of the agenda.
So the first item of business is public input on SPLOST.
Speak about light projects.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and have sort of clustered conversations about SPLOST, just so that we don't have people speaking about diversity of projects throughout the evening. So we'll structure it project category by project category. First item of business is the space modernization program, affordable housing, and the general obligation debt, which were the mayor and commission designated projects. So if you're here to speak about any of those, space modernization, affordable housing, or general obligation debt, come on down.
Moving right on.
Okay, we're going to move on to the set of public safety related projects, which are the public safety vehicle replacement program, the fire department equipment project, fire station number 5 replacement, and the E911 phone system. So any folks in the room who'd like to speak to those items? They call this wait time in the classroom. You want to give everybody a second to contemplate. All right, we're going to move on to the sustainability-related projects. The Environmental Mitigation and Restoration Program, the Renewable Energy Program, the Sustainability Investment Program, and the Energy Sustainability Program. Would anyone like to speak to those?
I would.
All right.
All right. Carol Myers, 260 Spalding Circle. As a member of the steering committee of 100% Athens, I'm speaking tonight regarding SPLOST Project 84, the Energy Sustainability Program. I have 2 topics to cover as you finalize the SPLOST project descriptions that will be part of the ballot in November. First concerns the joining of projects. I was present at your work session last week or whenever it was about combining some of the projects. Regarding Project 84, it would be acceptable to us to combine it with Project 51, the Renewable Energy Program submitted by the ACC Office of Sustainability. However, please resist combining Project 84 with any of the other Sustainability Office projects that address different environmental topics such as responding to and mitigating environmental hazards, conserving water, improving stormwater infrastructure, recycling, etc. Also, if Project 84 is combined with Project 51, we urge you to maintain the combined total funding. Andrew Saunders, Director of the Office of Sustainability, has told us that we need to invest $1.5 million per year to meet the 100% by 2035 goal. We're right on line with that as they are presently funded. My second point concerns the wording of the project description and the need to address equity in the SPLOST 84 program description. As is, the project description does not address equity in the verbiage, the present verbiage, something that the 100% resolution last month specifically addresses when you resolve that the efforts to transition to 100% renewable would facilitate, quote, energy efficiency upgrades, opportunities for clean transportation and renewable energy installations in low-income communities, end quote. I know your commitment to equity is there and real, and so urge you to adjust the wording slightly. A possible revision could be made easily by adding the phrase "in a just and equitable way" to the opening sentence of the project description. In addition, we urge you to add back a fourth category to the possible project buckets that could be financed through Project 84, something we had in our original project submission. The fourth category would allow the possibility of, quote, and this is just some sample wording, providing funds for community projects such as energy efficiency upgrades and solar installations on publicly funded low-income housing, end quote. A New York Times editorial this week concerning a 100% statewide initiative there emphasized the following point. With rapid technological and market developments driving down the price of renewable energy, getting to zero emissions is not the hardest part. What's really hard is getting to zero equitably. Climate policy must be designed to remedy deep and often deadly inequities in pollution exposure while ensuring that the most polluted and climate-impacted communities benefit the most from the renewable energy transformation we need to tackle climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. Would anyone else like to speak to the sustainability-related projects? All right, we're going to move on to the leisure services-related projects, the Athens West Park, the Beach Haven Park, the Tallassee Forest, Sandy Creek Nature Center, Memorial Park, and Holland Youth Sports Complex. Would anyone like to speak to any of those leisure services-related projects? You can line up. Don't be shy.
Good evening. My name is Nat Kirkendall. I live at 108 River Bottom Circle here in Athens, and I'm here tonight representing the Oconee Rivers Greenway Commission. And we'll get written comments to you shortly, but I'll read from those. The ORGC is pleased that projects relating to the Greenway are on the candidate list. We advise that 3 of these projects are essential to continue advancing the Greenway development in our county. These are Beach Haven, project number 61, Tallassee Forest, number 79, and the Environmental Mitigation and Restoration Program, number 50. For Beach Haven, since 2013, the ORGC has been actively involved in promoting the development of Beach Haven for protection of natural and cultural resources and for public enjoyment of this outstanding place in the heart of Athens. We partnered with Leisure Services, the ACC Office of Sustainability, and the Athens-Clarke Heritage Foundation, as well as UGA OLLI program, the local land trust, and others to inform visitors about Beach Haven and its bright future as an accessible park for everyone. This SPLOST project would bring that goal to fruition. For Tallassee Forest Park, the Commission has engaged with Tallassee Forest since 2012, initially advising the Oconee River Land Trust and Leisure Services on the content of conservation easements for the property, coordinating resource data collection with experts from UGA, the State Botanical Garden, and the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and actively participating in the master plan development for the site. ORGC has promoted public awareness of the site through special tours with local school groups and the OLLI program. The SPLOST project will aid in protecting resources while also offering our citizens and visitors an exciting range of experiences. Moreover, the Riverview Foundation has committed to providing $90,000 in matching funds pending the final master plan and the county's SPLOST investment. For the Environmental Mitigation and Restoration Program, both the river corridors in our county have been adversely affected by past misuses and would benefit from this program to reestablish native vegetation and ecological processes. On a related topic, at the June 11th M&C work session, there was some discussion about possibly combining 6 projects and their funding to be administered by Leisure Services into one in order to promote flexibility for redistributing funds if needed. However, our commission advises against this approach. The budgets provided proposed for each project have been honed through the SPLOST application and review process, We believe the voting public will have more confidence in SPLOST proposals if each project is accountable to a specific allocation. As was stated at the work session, people tend to vote based on their interest in individual projects rather than SPLOST program as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkendall.
Based on that, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Karen Porter, 285 Three Oaks Drive, and I've been a member of the board of the Oconee River Land Trust and one of the authors of the proposal number 79. I'm also a member of the Athens-Clarke County Tallassee Forestry Master Plan Advisory Committee and have been involved in Tallassee and its acquisition since 2011. I'm grateful the commission has left Tallassee Forest on as one of the projects. The park's going to provide a lot of high-quality public access to green space, and it's going to be the second largest park in the county. It's adjacent to Bernie Harris Lions that has a 91% student qualification of free lunch programs. And those students have already benefited from field trips. The cross-country team practices on it. It's within walking distance of 2 public schools and 3 private ones. It's protected by a conservation easement. Stephanie Thompson, Executive Director, is going to speak to that. The amenities that are proposed are all within the guidelines of the conservation easement. They're low impact and nature based. They would include a road, a parking area, a picnic area, children's play and adventure areas, short and medium walking trails, a restroom and a park office up in the entry area right near the school. In the backcountry, there would be much less development. It would be walking trails and would afford a very wilderness experience, something that we don't have in this county. There's also in the proposal in the operating budget a police officer park ranger, and that and citizens' eyes on the ground will make it a very safe place to visit and to live near. It's an exceptional environment. Forest is over 80 years old. It covers 58% of it, and there's a holly forest that covers 28. Very rare to have a large upland forest like that, especially on county land, and it's got free-flowing streams and springs that have been flowing even in the droughts. So it's recharging the Middle Oconee aquifer for our use. It's got 56 of the 91 butterfly species that occur in the state, and we have some examples of them to pass around and look at your convenience. Some of them are rare, and this is a wooded refuge. Because it was not disturbed for a very long period of time, these are really healthy habitats, and so rare species can exist within them. As I said, a lot of groups have participated in its use, and it's right now only open to guided tours. But we're hoping that we can get a park open so people can come and attend.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. We appreciate you coming tonight.
Okay, and Stephanie will tell you more about the project.
Hi, I'm Joan Roden, 340 Heather Cove. I'm here on behalf of the 88 projects submitted to the Citizen Committee, as well as the final cut that has been approved by the Commission. I refer to projects like Holland Youth Sports Park usability and safety improvements, and Gaines Youth Development Complex. It has always been my dream that young people would have a facility that would provide oversight and supervision where young people could hang out with their friends in an atmosphere of support, encouragement, and mentoring, a place to enjoy on a regular basis. I also want to mention Sandy Creek Nature Center exhibit modernization and Memorial Park renovation Phase 1, and I will include the Bear Hollow project, which didn't make the cut. I mention these worthy projects because they already exist. Funds are needed for the parks this county projected and saw to fruition years ago. Clarke County is already invested in and responsible for the maintenance and the safety of those operational projects in perpetuity. I'm here today to oppose a park that is only a drawing. It is the Tallassee Forest Park. Although groups and organizations have prematurely done their own positioning to see this forest park become a reality, it is only a vision today. It's a drawing on paper and in minds, but this project has been opposed since 2012 by the people who will be most adversely affected, not to mention the animal life that will be disturbed by the bulldozers and the construction companies in the invasion of a 310-acre pristine forest to which the pristine nature has been referred, that sits between Brittany Place, the subdivision in which we live, and River Cliff, and if you want a picture, I'll show you how close it is. Homes that back right up to this proposed park development. This project, since 2012 concept, has never explained how Athens-Clarke County will fund the maintenance and security moving forward. But homeowners and residents closest to the project have opposed it year after year. Our subdivisions are overrun with deer. We don't need more wildlife forced from their homes. This park has no plan for 24-hour supervision, and there is no security that can monitor it approximately 24/7. I ask that you remove Tallassee Forest Park from this list and appropriate funds toward projects that already exist and need funding. To start a new project when others so desperately need funding does not help the very people who truly need the Holland and Gaines youth developments. Let's take care of what we have before we break ground for a project that takes away from other projects that are so deserving. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roden.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Thompson, the Executive Director of the Coney River Land Trust. My address is 1020 Churchill Lane, Watkinsville. The Coney River Land Trust wrote and submitted SPLOST Project 79, which requests funding for Tallassee Park. On behalf of the Land Trust, I'd like to thank you for including Tallassee Park in the SPLOST package to date. We are excited that there is an opportunity through the SPLOST program to create a park on property that is already owned by the county for residents and visitors that will allow appropriate nature-based recreation while protecting what is special about the land. ORLT submitted this project because we hold the easement that permanently protects the land, and we are responsible for ensuring that any use or disturbances complies with the conservation easement. The Tallassee property was first acquired and protected by this easement with the vision from 2012 that someday Athens-Clarke County residents and visitors of all ages and abilities would be able to experience its beauty via appropriate recreational use while also making sure that the natural areas thrive. This project will do just that. We've already heard about where the park is located in an underserved part of the county for green space. You've heard about some of the possible park amenities that will carefully open the park to visitation while still protecting what's special. I wanted to also end by saying that ORLT is committed to continue to work with the county to make this park a reality. And we will do our job and continue to monitor the easement and ensure that any park that is built complies with the easement. We're involved in the master planning process. We will help raise additional funds. We have led and will continue to lead cleanup efforts. And we will continue to introduce people from students to retirees to the property. Thank you again for including Tallassee Park in your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, respected commissioners, my name is Peter Norris. I reside at 460 Sunset Drive. I am here on behalf of the Upper Coney Watershed Network, of which I'm a board of directors. I rise in support of a project. I hope you will indulge me that is not on your candidate list. That is the water trails. In 2011, UGA, Oconee Rivers Greenway Commission, and Upper Coney Watershed Network interested citizens developed solutions for the creation of a water trail along North Oconee. In September 2014, this commission passed a resolution of support for the establishment of a water trail along the Middle and North Oconee rivers. I believe some of you voted for that resolution. The Greenway Network Plan, as well as Envision Athens Action Plan, both recommend the creation of a water trail. Also in 2014, Unified Government and UON entered into agreement to create a boat launch at Ben Burton. UON and the Riverview Foundation provided funds for that launch. While the launch at Ben Burton is beautiful, it is missing its partner takeout. We appreciate the work that you and the Citizens Advisory Committee have put into the generation of the candidate project list. When first presented, the Water Trails proposal received great positive feedback from the CAC. Naturally, we were disappointed that the project did not make the final cut. I'm not here to ask you to alter that candidate list or recalculate any funding allocations. Rather, I ask that you designate up to $50,000 of any excess funds remaining from SPLOST 2020 projects to be dedicated for the creation of water trails. With this designation, UON can seek matching grants from nonprofit organizations because they realize that the city has committed to develop water trails. And we can develop an amenity that has environmental, economic, and public health benefits. I thank you for your consideration and your service.
Thank you, Mr. Norris.
Mayor Gertz and Commissioners, my name is Joan Sheldon. I live at 365 Brookstone Drive. I'm on the board of the Friends of Bear Hollow, who are the sponsors of Project 60, Rebuilding Bear Hollow Wildlife Trail. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your statements of support for trying to find a way to help Bear Hollow in your recent work session. Second, in illustration of the urgency of this project, I would like to update you on the recent storm damage at Bear Hollow. In our SPLOST proposal presentation, we emphasized problems with erosion and old buildings. If you were on our tour, you know that we emphasized that there too. The recent heavy rains drew attention to all of these concerns. The Bear's Night House and the stairwell leading to it flooded with water, mud, and debris, piling as high as the first step. The Bobcat's Night House also flooded, as it usually does when it rains. The roof of the reptile house leaked, and a large pool of water gathered in the ceiling, forcing staff to close the building to visitors. Erosion was substantial along the fence lines and exposed buried sections of the fence, which compromised security and led to the temporary closure of the otter exhibit until repairs can be made. Without a significant investment in zoo infrastructure, we can expect these kinds of issues to continue and to escalate to the detriment of the animals in the zoo's care. While storms will always present challenges to us, a modern facility can ensure that animals are kept safe and dry in proper night houses that don't flood every time it rains. Additionally, the zoo needs modern alternate holding spaces so that when something does happen that requires the closure of an exhibit, as it does from time to time, an animal is not forced to stay in a small concrete night house for days at a time, such as occurred this time when the otter's fence was damaged. Our caring staff and volunteers at the zoo can mitigate issues like these with alternative coverings for the floor and lots of enrichment and training sessions, but a modern zoo would include spaces that can better handle these kinds of situations and better honor our community's commitment to best practices and a high quality of life for our animal residents. Zoo staff, interns, and volunteers continue to provide the best care they can, even with continuing major challenges to the physical facility. But without investment in this 30 to 60-year-old facility, we will in the foreseeable future fail to be able to keep this commitment. Therefore, I urge you to fully fund Project 60 and rebuild Bear Hollow so that it can last for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheldon.
Mayor Gertz and Commissioners, my name is Chris Sparnick, and I live at 354 Glenwood Drive. As a board member and on behalf of the Friends of Bear Hollow, and to encourage the funding of SPLOST Proposal Number 60, Renovation of Bear Hollow Wildlife Trail, I'm submitting to you 245 new signatures and 12 new testimonials gathered from the community supporting our efforts for new construction at Bear Hollow Zoo. These new numbers bring the totals to 440 signatures and 49 testimonials collected in support of the project. I also have these adorable children's petitions that were also helped by their parents. I hope you'll look at them, they're kind of cute. I also want to provide you data regarding the community and specific scientific value of Bear Hollow Zoo. To date, in 2019, 11 interns, primarily students enrolled in the UGA Wildlife Ecology Program, have provided 944 hours working at Bear Hollow without pay for Athens-Clarke County. offering care to the animals and educational opportunities to the visitors and gaining unique and highly valuable experiences for themselves. Bear Hollow has also been an important partner to the scientific community in Athens, participating in research and contributing to several scholarly articles published in the Journal of Zoo and Wildlife Medicine. Finally, it's important to note that the zoo renovation proposal was included by the Citizens Advisory Committee in all but the final recommended projects list and ranked highly in the committee's dotmocracy exercise. It was eliminated at the very last meeting. And echoing wise words from you, our mayor and commissioners, citizens don't vote for SPLOST. They vote for projects. Including the zoo renovation proposal with its broad community support and emotional appeal will make the entire SPLOST package more attractive to voters in November. On behalf of Friends of Bear Hollow, I'd like to thank Mayor Gertz and our commissioners and all of their staff for the hard work they're putting into the crafting of SPLOST 2020. And with that, I'd like to submit these.
Thank you, Mr. Smarty. I appreciate you coming down. Evening, Mr. Cook.
Good evening. My name is Walter Cook. I reside at 105 Yorkshire Road in Bogart. I have made a few park plans for rural counties, semi-rural, all of Georgia is semi-rural, I guess, as well as having taught forest planning, park planning for 25 years. In that time, I have read and studied the advantages and disadvantages of plans by various experts through their textbooks and actual plans, and have observed situations in existing parks and in forest recreation areas, including wilderness management. I specifically stressed the importance of knowing the resource and the attractions that visitors will want to see and experience. 2, the characteristics of the population, the people who the area is being designed for, to attract and please them. Other factors to be considered, including costs, who is paying for it, and the neighboring ownerships. Of all that, I think the objective of the Tallassee project is of great importance. I understand the desires of the donor and many others who have become involved in the project is to provide a backwoods experience of relatively natural forest in a space large enough to provide a sense of away from development, but with foot trails so that visitors would not be required to experience real nature by crashing through a natural forest like a timber cruiser. My interest mainly in the backwoods is because this property is divided neatly by a whole series of utility lines, oil lines, water lines, electric lines, and the part when you first come in is called the front part. That'll be some normal, more or less normal park design. After you pass through all those utility corridors, you're in the backwoods, over 200 acres. I flagged a network of foot trails that were somewhat designed by the planning consultant that the county hired a few years ago. In my wilderness management course, I talked about real wilderness, but also pseudo-wilderness and mini-wilderness categories that would include the Tallassee Forest. This proposed park will be a unique place for Athens-Clarke County residents. There is nothing like it anywhere in our small county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Mayor Gertz, Commissioners, I'm Rob Winthrop. I live at 633 Millage Circle in Athens, and I'm involved with the Tallassee Forest, and I'm retired from the timber business, and I realize that there are pieces of land that are very special and they need to be managed and preserved. I've walked the trails that Walt laid out at the Tallassee Forest, and I also have some land in Oglethorpe County that has a conservation easement that I work with the Oconee River Land Trust. And I'm got great the easement has been in place for about 13 years, and the Oconee River Land Trust does a very good job of making sure that the land is properly managed, that it is not abused. And I think we have to look at the long view here. Athens is a rapidly developing area, and this particular tract of land is something that is very important now and especially for the children of Athens-Clarke County in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winthrop. If you've come in recently, we're organizing public comment on SPLOST by project categories, so we're in the midst of leisure services related projects.
Good evening. I'm Marissa Chastain. I'm a member of the Athens West Business Leaders Organization, and I'm involved in Proposal 57, the Athens West Park. Adding a park to Athens West Side is a need that was identified by Clarke County almost 20 years ago. Our main objective is to provide a resource for underserved communities in Athens West, and that includes at-risk youth, children with disabilities, and senior communities. We also have conducted surveys that showed the communities in this area agree that there is a need for this type of facility. At this time, we believe the most important portion of the proposal to act on is land acquisition. Prices are increasing and available land options are decreasing, so the county will have more options by acting sooner. And while we absolutely see the value and benefit of our existing parks, we also see that they do not address all the needs of our community, so we urge you to consider a park space for Athens West, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Chastain.
Hey, I'm Melissa Lee from 423rd Street, Athens, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission to express our support for the Jackson Street Art Walk, which is SPLOST project number 70. This project includes planning, design, and construction of street and pedestrian improvements downtown between Hoyt and Darty Streets to establish a pedestrian-oriented promenade showcasing prominent works of art. The project also transforms underutilized and aging city infrastructure into a vital community gathering space. This project is on city-owned land and will strengthen community connections by transforming the streets and eliminating street curbs. This will be a pedestrian-friendly area equally accessible to kids, strollers, seniors, and wheelchairs from nearby Bethel Homes and Denny Towers. The existing Lay Park parking area will be relocated and a new playground will be constructed in a safer location for children. The parking area will allow a new plaza for art displays, structures, and public gathering spaces. We're most excited that this area will serve as a public commons for a new downtown space that will be perfect for festivals and other weekend events. More than anything, this project democratizes access to and the use of downtown. By making these public spaces more accessible, all generations will be more comfortable in this place. This development will make Athens look how it feels, a creative, fun place to live, work, and play. The Jackson Street Art Walk was the last item cut from the final SPLOST list, and the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission thinks it's one worth reconsidering. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Good evening. My name is Tommy Valentine, 395 Cleveland Avenue. I'm here representing Athens-Clarke Heritage Foundation. At this point, both you and the Citizens Advisory Committee have heard from us so many times about Beach Haven, and I know this is kind of, fourth quarter final play. So I've tried to decide what is it that you need to hear that you haven't already heard or seen or toured. And so the thing that comes to mind for me is that my job is usually to talk about the past, and I just want to just quickly, with your help, look at the future for a second. Some years from now, a child that is a member of one of the 400 to 500 families in this area that don't have equitable access to a park will walk out of their house, walk through one of the 7 entrances to this park, and walk amongst the largest hardwood forest in our city. They'll walk by art and architecture that inspires them. If they're a person of color, they'll know that it was built by their ancestors, and they might feel inspiration to become an architect or to do the work in the area. This park that they walk through will likely be filled with youth development programs, as we've heard from Chesapeake Community and from the Girl Scouts, where people will find about civics and science and other important things. And it's true, when they walk by the plaque that says that this was the commission that established it, they won't really know much about the process that took to create it, or how much suspense there was, or how much work had to be done. But what they will know is that they can walk to Oglethorpe Elementary, back to Atlanta Highway, that they'll walk by tourists that are there to see one of the most incredible examples of that style architecture in the United States. And when they do that, it'll be because of the decisions that you as a body made. It'll be about whether or not you listened and invested and cared, just as the Citizens Advisory Committee has listened and invested and cared. The future of that child and their ability to walk by these structures and in this space is determined by you. And I know, for those of you that I talk to, I realize that your job, it means guzzling from a fire hose at all times, sometimes feeling jaded, sometimes having to make 100 impossible decisions on 100 different topics at once. But this is a tangible, practical example of a decision you can make that will change the life of that child. And when they go back to the family pavilion on that site and enjoy with their family the nature surrounding them, that will be thanks to you, and we will give you our thanks. So thank you for listening throughout this process. We're almost there. Please make this park a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. At the end of the evening, we'll have some opportunity, at the end of this public input session on SPLOST, we'll have the opportunity for public input on any other projects that aren't on the named list or the SPLOST program in general. So if you're waiting for that time, it's coming up soon. Moving on to public comment regarding existing facility renovations or improvements. The recommended projects in that category are the animal shelter improvements, the facility equipment and system replacement program, and the Athens-Clarke Creative Reuse Space and Center for Hard to Recycle Material program. All right, we are going to move forward to new facilities or infrastructure projects. And those recommended projects include the high-speed wireless broadband network, the new recovered material processing facility, the Athens-Clarke County Library project, and the Youth and Community Enrichment Program.
Good evening, mayors and commissioners. My name is Ian Thomas. I'm the chair of the Athens-Clarke County Library's Board of Trustees, and I'm obviously speaking to the proposed East Side Library branch. I know I sent everybody an email, I believe last week, which summarized our feelings on it, the potentials for economic investment, cultural center, all that sort of thing. But I did want to emphasize here this evening just how forward-looking into the future we actually anticipate this project being. I mean, we're talking about a cultural hub for an area that could really use this. We're talking about economic investment opportunity, providing a hub for that. And we really do want this library facility to serve the entire east side and provide a lot of those kind of tangible things that we talked about in the email. An early voting location, for example, adult education facility. And, I'm going to steal from Mr. Valentine here about looking into the future. I mean, a lot of this, providing people these sorts of information and resources can really have a huge impact on where their life goes, after they've had access to them. So we really thank you. I mean, I don't think I've heard anybody say anything bad about this. I think that's really a good testament to our community that there's such support for it. And I just wanted to let you guys know that we appreciate your help. I appreciate the work for the Citizens Advisory Committee. And hopefully we'll get it on the SPLOST vote and get it past the voters in November. Thank you very much. And also, if you have any questions, of course, Director Bell and myself are more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any other input on the new facilities? All right, we're going to move on to the transportation infrastructure-related projects. Recommended projects in this category are the Airport Capital Improvement Program and the Vincent Drive Sidewalk Project.
Tyler Dewey, 1075 West Broad Street. I'll be speaking about the Vincent Drive Sidewalk. I believe this is the first time I've ever spoken about it in front of y'all. Obviously, Bike Athens presented the project in front of the CAC to construct a sidewalk on Vincent Drive. At the time, well, still not technically, there was no Athens in Motion Commission, so when looking for projects to put on there, Bike Athens sort of went through the list of Tier 1 projects. And when we talk about equity, and you look at the demographics of the neighborhood, you look at the income levels of the neighborhood, you look at the existing infrastructure that exists along Vincent Drive, and then you look at the resources that exist along Vincent Drive with the Holland Youth Sports Complex, a soon-to-be-built sidewalk on Jefferson Road, hopefully some greenway extending up through the nature complex along Newton Bridge Road. Vincent Drive was definitely a street that was calling out, and we know the residents have been asking for it for a while, for a sidewalk, so people had a safer, more comfortable place to walk, especially with families or kids. We also look at, when you talk about parks, Athens-Clarke County has a large supply of parks, but I don't think we do enough of a good job to make sure that the parks are truly accessible by everyone. Think about how many parks that you can't get to unless you have a car. They're not serviced by a bus route, they're not serviced by a sidewalk, they're not serviced by bike lanes. So I think that excludes a lot of people from enjoying those natural resources and those park facilities. And so I just support the continued inclusion of the Vincent Drive sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. All right, now's the time when any other project not previously discussed or input on the package broadly is accepted for input.
Good evening. My name is Evan Mills. I reside at 517 Ashbrook Court. I am here on behalf of Advantage Behavioral Health Systems. Our office headquarters are located at 250 North Avenue. I'm here to discuss our Path to Recovery residential program proposal to develop a supportive housing facility for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness and co-occurring substance use disorders. According to a recent study completed by the Athens Wellbeing Project, in Athens-Clarke County, 36% of households self-reported at least one person with a mental illness. Additionally, 1 in 4 individuals with a mental illness expressed that they needed treatment in the last year but did not receive it. The most common reasons stated were affordability issues and not knowing where to access services. Local studies have shown that 38.6% of our jail inmates have a mental illness and/or a co-occurring substance use disorder. 56% of these individuals return to jail within a year, averaging 12.7 lifetime arrests. Only 28% of these individuals were successfully connected to treatment upon release from jail. We have some work to do. In 2005, a study completed by the ACC Department of Housing and Community Development found that 536 homeless individuals accounted for over $12.4 million in healthcare-related costs associated with emergency room visits, inpatient hospital stays, and ambulatory service activities. Studies across the United States have found that providing supportive housing to individuals experiencing chronic homelessness and mental illness reduces service utilization and the associated cost to communities. Knoxville, Tennessee, demonstrated an overall cost decrease of 57% among housing participants. Furthermore, the study indicated a 78% drop in service utilization among the participants post-housing placement. Charlotte, North Carolina demonstrated an 81% reduction in emergency room visits and hospitalizations among their housing participants, resulting in cost savings of $2.4 million. Additionally, average resident income increased by 76% during year 2 of that study. This is indicative of a higher level of stability and independence among residents. We must celebrate our local initiatives that are working to decrease the prevalence of these individuals within our justice and emergency response systems. The work of our Justice and Mental Health Collaborative, Envision Athens, Athens Wellbeing Project, the expansion of treatment court activities, and improved service coordination activities within the local healthcare system and school districts speak to our community's proactive approach to addressing barriers and improving our local social services network. These celebrations are justified. However, we continue to lack available, affordable housing resources for those special needs populations who maintain the highest risk of relapse, are the most frequent users of our social services, require the highest level of intervention, and therefore are the most expensive to our community. By expanding our supportive housing options, we can directly impact the lives of those individuals, minimize the greater cost to our community, and reignite the spark that had once faded within so many of our residents in need. These are thoughts for your consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Good evening. I'm Caitlin Short. I live at 170 Greencrest Drive. I am here to speak on Project 56, the Athens Welcome Center access improvements. I have been an employee of the Athens Welcome Center for the past 6 years, and I am one of 3 verified certified professional travel counselors on staff there. Throughout my time working at the Welcome Center, while our uniqueness and our beauty is greatly admired by our visitors, I can recall a countless number of times where I've had visitors complain about having issues finding us and having trouble accessing our location, which has been especially difficult for some handicapped visitors, in particular, primarily due to the materials used on site, which have deteriorated over time, such as loose gravel in our walkways and uneven bricks in the courtyard behind our building. The bricks have become a trip hazard, and the gaps between the bricks make it especially difficult to walk over with a cane or a walker, as it's easy for them to get caught up in the gaps. Just this morning, in fact, I had a visitor call asking about how his significant other, who had to use either a cane, a walker, or a wheelchair, should go about planning for their visit to our Welcome Center. He needed to know whether the cane, the walker, or the wheelchair would be the best option for getting around our site, and I gave him the best and most honest suggestion that I could. But honestly, I feel that there really is no one good answer to that sort of question when our site is in the condition that it currently is and has been for quite some time now. Last week, I had a visitor call me and say, you know, we would love for you to welcome us, but we cannot find you. And our site has become overgrown, and we do not have enough clear, well-placed signage for visitors to find us as easily as they should be able to. This was not the first time I'd received a call like this from a visitor, and I'm sure other fellow employees have dealt with the same issue. Once people do find us, if it's a busy day, we then get complaints about how limited our parking is and how they struggle to find a place to park. Sometimes we unfortunately even have to turn people away, ask them to circle the block and come back, or pay to park at a meter across the street or elsewhere near our property, which should not be necessary. Occasionally, we host events, and parking is always an issue during these times as well. We actually had one person think that the federal building lot was a lot on our property, and she ended up not being able to access her car until the following day. One final thing that I would like to touch on is the fact that pedestrians regularly use the vegetated and open areas on our lot as a shortcut, and I feel this space should be spruced up and transformed into a formal green space and walking path. I also think it would be nice to have a well-kept green space in our part of downtown in general, considering we are surrounded by apartments and hotels and parking lots, and I believe it would make our location more attractive and enjoyable to visitors and locals alike. I also feel it would be very helpful to have new sidewalks installed in places that are safer and more convenient to cross. So thank you all for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Short.
Good evening. Thanks for being here and allowing us public comment. I'm Evelyn Reese, Director of the Athens Welcome Center. I reside at 118 East Church Street in Lexington. I'm speaking in favor of the Welcome Center Access Improvements Plan, Project 56, a proposal from the Athens-Clarke Heritage Foundation. There are many layers to this master plan that's been developed over the course of 4 years, all with broad-based support. Each component is carefully aligned with the SPLOST 2020 goals, economic development with a focus on equity, historic preservation, and the environment. The plan is carefully aligned with existing initiatives, including Envision Athens, Athens in Motion Master Plan, and the Public Art Master Plan's Cultural Trail Project. The alternate plan reduced the project to essentials while creating an inviting, barrier-free place to welcome visitors. The original proposal cost $1.63 million. The alternate plan cost $1.08 million. We appreciate the Commission's interest in combining costs of multiple projects to try to find savings that might fund this project, and we do send a lot of visitors to our parks. Related to parking and ADA access, the alternate plan proposes a permeable brick surface for the gravel paths, parking lot, and brick patio, while introducing a new parking area with better ADA access. On the subject of pedestrian access, the nearest crosswalk is at the corner of Dougherty and Thomas. It's the conduit for hotel guests to reach the Classic Center and commercial downtown district. That crosswalk is classified by Athens-Clarke County as a Tier 1 pedestrian crash hotspot. For locals, there are 60 Docebo employees who cross Dougherty and Thomas each day in areas where there are no crosswalks. That amounts to nearly 500 pedestrian crossings per day without the protection of a crosswalk. The Welcome Center Master Plan proposes 2 new crosswalks where locals already cross and will greatly improve the safety of hotel guests. And Drew Rassler has had input on that plan that Josh Coons has been working on for some years. A first impression lasts forever. As a visitor's first stop, the Athens Welcome Center must be a welcoming place for everyone, a place that says all of us matter. Visitors need to know Athens is ready to serve people with disabilities. As a center for public history, visitors and citizens should know Athens as an equitable community that values the inclusive history, not just the white antebellum South, but the history of people whose backs the town was built upon, the contributions of women, artists, and musicians. Visitors should know Athens values the environment by making the most of its green space. People who use welcome centers strategically optimize their time in any given place. We assist over 11,000 visitors who have a laser-focused economic impact. Our citizenship is in great part comprised of individuals who first arrived as visitors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Reese.
Hello, I'm Ryan Lewis. I live at 445 Forest Heights Drive. I realize I probably should have written something in advance to save you my rambling, but I was working at, I run Kindercore Vinyl, record pressing plant in town, and we work with the Welcome Center frequently. And I'm here to speak in support of the handicap access to the Welcome Center. I feel that for a town that is as inclusive as ours and a town with so many wonderful projects that we're here showing, that we should have suitable access for everyone to be able to access the facilities. And I think that's really important. It's easy for that to get lost, and I've heard that there was some thought that perhaps it could be achieved with grants, and after doing some research, it seems that that might not be the case. So I want to just speak as a business that works with the Welcome Center. They do a lot of tours with us, and we really appreciate their support and want to make sure that everyone has access. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Hi, I'm Jill Reed. I live at 130 Maple Circle in Athens, and I'm also here to speak on behalf of the Church Wattle Brumby House. The saving of the Brumby House was the foundation of the Athens-Clarke Heritage Foundation in 1967. It's the reason that historic preservation happened in Athens. When the house was moved, there was no decision on the part of the Heritage Foundation, which was forming at the time, about the placement of the house, which has led us to a parking dilemma, among other things. And I'm not griping about where we are. I think it's great. But the Church Wattle Brumby House is the entrance to Athens. It is our welcome center, and you know how hard we've all worked for many years to develop an economic engine with tourism. Over 11,000 people came last year, and I think more would have come could they have had parking. More also would visit if our handicapped accessibility were updated. It is so shamefully out of date now that it's almost embarrassing. So it's the entrance to the city, and it's the first impression people have. And you all know how hard we're working to attract people to retire here and to come live here. It's also the resource locally for all the state of Georgia tourism information. It's a volunteer workspace. It's an expanded gift shop, which we now have located. All of this is located in a 9 by 9 foot room. The gift space to expand the gift space into the addition to the building would enable us to develop an earned income possibility that would serve as a source of Athens products to all other stores in town. Then we need to expand the parking area, which, thank you, Kelly. I understand you've been negotiating a little bit about the accessibility, and the landscaping. We also need to think about the historic interpretation of the house, which is not finished. So we now have a new boost of energy coming in to help us finish furnishing the house, as well as interpreting it, setting up a docent program, and some other things that will bring more people to the house. Now remember, the Brumby House was the first preserved historic home in Athens that was a community project. It was the first place to open to the public for tours and things.
Thank you, Ms. Weed. We
Thank
appreciate you
you.
coming tonight. Would anyone else in the audience tonight like to speak to the SPLOST program generally? All right. Would any commissioners like to speak to the SPLOST program this evening?
Are we going in order of the
You speak
sections,
generally.
or just generally? Okay. I guess.
Go right ahead,
Great,
Commissioner
thank
Parker.
you. So in reference to sustainability projects number 51 and 84, I would agree that combining without lessening the amounts for those projects could be a way to actually broaden some of their goals in a way that make more people happy, as without losing some of the needed funds we need to make good on our goals of reaching 100% sustainability by 2035. So with that said, I am happy with some of the language changes that Dr. Myers presented this evening, particularly related to adding back in funding for community projects such as energy efficiency upgrades, and solar installations on publicly funded low-income housing. This matches well with our goals of affordable housing in the SPLOST, so that if we need to make sure these new developments are in line with our goals of sustainability for the city, we have funds to do so on the side. As well, it's something that might make this project more attractive to a wider variety of people. So I just wanted to put that out there, as well as showing my support for adding our emphasis to justice and equitability in that opening line, as Dr. Meyer suggested, just to further align this project with our broader project criteria for SPLOST as a whole, and make known and clear our intentions to make sure that filters down into everything that we do.
Commissioner Hamby?
Sure. I just want to, before we get all into this discussion, I just wanted to follow up. Are we still planning to have a work session, SPLOST
Our
related?
work session now is tentatively scheduled for the second Monday in July.
Will we be discussing the SPLOST?
We will be discussing SPLOST at that work session.
Okay. And remind me again when we will actually vote on the final project?
We'd hope
project list.
no later than hopefully July 16th, the Tuesday following that.
Okay.
And then we have to give Winterville and Bogart time for their councils to get together and improve for your final vote on the language, which would be the first Tuesday in August.
Okay. So I guess I'm just hearing you say there's going to be a chance for this commission to be able to discuss what, certainly the public input we heard tonight and other projects and other suggestions. So I just want to make that clear.
That's right.
At the second Tuesday in July.
That'd be the third Tuesday in July that we would vote.
But the second
work
Tuesday-
session would be the second Monday.
Second Monday, I'm sorry.
July the 8th.
July the 8th.
And let me say this too,
And this
based
will be
on
just specifically for SPLOST? I'm
Just
assuming?
for SPLOST.
Okay, good enough.
And based on your comments from the last work session, staff is looking at combining some projects, creating some pool projects and things of that nature. So I'll be sending that out to you hopefully before the end of this week, and that'll give you something to look at and discuss with each other.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, that second Monday being close to the 4th of July holiday, some of us aren't going to be here. We have longstanding travel plans. How do we offer our input on these projects? I'd like to offer my thoughts in a public way somehow. I certainly have, we have had, it's been batted around the idea of extending the SPLOST for a year to raise an additional $30 or so million, and I'd like to participate in that discussion so we can get some of these projects on there, especially Bear Hollow. There are dire needs at Bishop Park, certainly the Welcome Center, and I would like to have
broader discussion about the Advantage Housing Project and how that could fit in with some of our affordable housing funds and home funds, some other funding sources out there, to see how we can help assist some of these projects. It might just take a small SPLOST designation that could act as matching funds to help make this project happen. And also the water trail project. I'm wondering if some of that could be combined in the park improvement projects to have water access at these parks. I believe strongly that we need to create some water access. I believe that it could be significant economic development opportunities if we get that water trail access. I mean, I've seen it in other communities. They build their entire local economy and tourism around their rivers and their water access. And there are certainly opportunities for locally owned small businesses to pop up near that access. So I believe there's a side to that project that many of us don't see. I want to emphasize that Beach Haven and Tallassee are also part of the Greenway, our long-standing Greenway network plan. These are locations on the Greenway, so I feel it's really urgent that those projects stay on the list. I mean, I have a lot to say. I'm really disappointed that this work session is going to take place at an inconvenient time.
Commissioner Thornton.
I'm glad that we're going to have that next session, and I really want to speak to the North Avenue situation. We've talked about issues around North and the Day Center, and I can't keep saying I'm new and something got by me, but this one really did get by me, and I think that when we're talking about economic development and equity, there's a population of people that always get overlooked. And I think the CAC did a great job. I think they did a wonderful job. But I drive that highway every day going home, and we need to do more for that population of folk. And I don't know how we do it and still honor the work of the CAC, but that is a dire need, and we need to take action in some meaningful way. So I don't know what information, but I think if it's okay, I'll be calling Blaine to see what else I need to find out about that area, and maybe we can share it. But that's an accident waiting to happen. It is bad. So we need to make sure we do everything in our power to address it.
Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I'll speak briefly about two items. One is Tallassee Forest, which, by the way, I'm going to see if we can't change on the ballot the name of that project to the Tallassee Forest Natural Areas Program. It's not a park. It is a park by definition, but it's not a park the way people think about a park. I'm going to, if SPLOST passes, and that project is on the agenda, I'll work very hard to be sure that it is truly a nature preserve, that it's very low intense. We have to, because of the Coney Land Trust easement, we have to provide some public access to it. It does not, it must be very low intensity. So we will have a wilderness area in the back. On the front, I'm going to try very hard to be sure that we do the minimal required to provide an educational facility for children to come and visit the natural area and learn about it, and that there's a gate. And the gate goes down in the evening and up in the morning, and we minimize the abuse of that park. Now I'm going to talk about homelessness and mental illness again, and how disappointed I am that we don't have a project that Advantage put forward to us to provide 30 bedrooms as transitional housing for those who are mentally ill and are getting treatment at Advantage and need a place to live during that transitional period. We talk about this need all the time, and here we have a $7 million opportunity to do that. And Advantage is going to staff it. We're not having to pay anything, but we will own the building, so there will be some maintenance involved, but we're not having to pay any any personal services other than taking care of those buildings. 30 bedrooms. That's a big deal. And I don't know where we find the $7 million, but we need to think about that. I think this is an opportunity we need to take advantage of.
Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to back up those comments by Commissioner Neesmith for the advantage of behavioral health. I mean, this is an obvious need we have here, and for the kind of service that we'll see provided, that we've heard the need for over and over again. I mean, for that price of $7 million, I would hope that if we're talking about possibly expanding this to another year, that we're thinking about projects like that. That don't have as many people up here advocating for, which, I mean, because a lot of the people this is going to help don't have the ability to come here and advocate for this kind of thing, but it's desperately needed. I hope that we can have that discussion. And I also have to back up with Commissioner Link. I will be gone on July 8th also, and did schedule my vacation around these meetings so that I can make sure I was here for it. So I'm a little disappointed if we're going to move the date to a time when I'm not going to be here, whenever I specifically tried to make sure I could adhere to my responsibility to be here. I do hope that we could possibly look at revisiting that date.
All right, so SPLOST conversation will continue. Commissioner Edwards.
I look forward to seeing what staff brings forward from the SPLOST office when it comes to these leisure services programs. The request for the Welcome Center is perfectly reasonable and a modest request when lined up against what else is out there. I think we need to make that happen. And from what I've been hearing from some of my colleagues as well about leisure services and about the parks, let's be mindful of the parks we have today when developing new parks. So let's not let Bear Hollow just fall into nothingness while we're building and developing new parks. And I think that staff is mindful of that. The SPLOST office is mindful of that. We're mindful of that behind the rail, and I'm hopeful that we'll get something done for Bear Hollow. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Parker.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, since I wasn't aware at first what direction we were going around the circle in, I noticed that, we had a lot of people come up and speak in favor of a lot of projects that are really important. There was one project that I didn't hear anyone come up and speak in favor of, and that was the Classic Center project, which has sort of reared its head again, or may in coming weeks. And I just want to emphasize that if we are going to extend this SPLOST, which I think is a good idea, to make room for projects that are very needed, like the Welcome Center, to attend to some of the issues that they're having at Bear Hollow, as Commissioner Edwards said, we need to be looking at projects that people are expressing support for and that currently exist and that need our help direly.
All right, we are going to move on to public input on the new business items. So any member of the public who would like to speak to new business items, now is that time on the special called session agenda. All right, given that we have new business on a special called session, we need a motion for suspension of rules.
So moved.
A second for suspension of rules.
Second.
Yeah. All in favor of suspension of rules?
Aye.
All right, so we're moving on. We have three new business items to consider under suspension of rules. The first is a very exciting development, an intergovernmental agreement with the Development Authority of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County for an economic development project. And before I provide an announcement, I want to see if commissioners had any questions or input on this matter.
Which matter are we talking about?
This is the economic development project This is item number 2 under the special called session under new business.
Well, I can say something too.
Commissioner Hamby.
We did have an Economic Development Authority meeting this morning, and what we're about to talk about was voted unanimously from that perspective. So that was a good thing.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to say that, this looks like a very minimal investment from the local government to enable some greater investment from the state. And the numbers I've seen, these are well-paying jobs that are coming here. These aren't just $10 and $12 an hour. We're talking, what is it, 500 jobs, $14 an hour and up, $48,000 a year. I mean, this looks like a good deal. I'm not always in support of these kind of, government subsidized economic development projects, but this one looks pretty good.
Commissioner Denson?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have 503 jobs, $14 an hour or higher with benefits. I think it's only 5% of the jobs part-time. 95% of these can be full-time jobs coming here. Very exciting. And I think this does show, I agree with Commissioner Link. I do think we have to be mindful whenever we're doing these kind of subsidies. But I think this just proves that, when we have a business coming here that wants to be Athens friendly, we are going to support those. And I hope that this is just the beginning of a flourish of more jobs, quality living wage paying jobs coming here.
Commissioner Parker?
Thank you. I was wondering what an example of force majeure or other extraordinary circumstances are for the purposes of adjusting performance standards for this project?
Would the mayor or attorney like to mention that provision of the agreement?
Yeah, I would think that a recession like we had in 2008, or if there was some supply disruption that would affect the business's ability to deliver products, things like that.
Okay. That's all. I'm happy to support the project.
Commissioner Neesmith?
In case the public wonders what we're talking about investing $20,000 and getting 500 pretty good paying jobs.
Actually, 60,000.
About 60 from the local government.
60 from, oh, okay.
A couple $100,000 from the state.
Right, okay, I saw capital $20,000. Anyway, it's not like we're investing millions and forgiving property taxes. We're not even doing that. The value of the property will go up. It's in the West Clarke development. So this is pretty darn exciting. I'm really pleased that we got this.
Are you able to mention who
All right.
it is?
Well, I'd like us to take a vote, and then I'll explain a little bit more. So I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so the big reveal is that Athens is going to be achieving north of 500 new jobs, paying an average wage of $36,500 a year with benefits on Newton Bridge Road in the general time development around which there's been an enormous amount of energy. And it's going to be an operations center for Wayfair, the e-commerce business provider who specializes in home goods. These are going to be jobs on a bus line very near the center of town, paying a wage that's going to allow people to live a good life. And I'm very excited. This is a company that's been in Georgia with a footprint in Chatham County already, and they're expanding now to Clarke. They have a family of sites. Wayfair operates along with Joss and Main, All Modern, Birch Lane, and Paragold. I think there are a couple people who I do want to make kind of some special recognition of. Certainly the Georgia Department of Economic Development, who are partners in this, as previously referenced. Athens-Clarke County provided about $60,000 in support, and the state of Georgia just north of $200,000. I want to thank the project shepherds at General Time, Michael Dinnerman, Jennifer Davison, and their crew who've been doing yeoman's work for many, many months to land this. And really, this is the kickstart of many other opportunities there. As your agenda report indicates, this is less than 20% of the space at this site. And I want to especially thank our economic development team, Michelle Wen, who's with us tonight, and folks in her department. So a huge win for Athens, more than 500 new jobs here in Athens-Clarke County. So thank you all for your work. All right, we are moving forward. We have an authorization of the Athens Housing Authority for use of eminent domain to acquire 270 Paris Street.
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Input from Commissioner Link.
Yeah, and from what I understand, this is a friendly condemnation. The family that owns the property is eager to unload this property, and this is just a means of clearing the title. So, yeah.
That's right. So for members of the public, there are many cases when title can be confused with multiple heirs, and the kind of prominent family members simply want the formalization of this process in order for this to be moved into affordable housing stock. So we have a motion, a second. Any other comment? I believe Commissioner Hamby was the motion, Commissioner Neesmith was the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and item number 4 is revision to an existing intergovernmental agreement with the Housing Authority. Any commission input on this item?
I move for approval.
A second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Neesmith, second from Commissioner Parker. Any other input on this item from commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're going to move on to something very exciting. Some of you may recognize there is a new member in the audience tonight who's not been in these chambers before. And we tested Mr. Drake by having him sit through an hour and 15 minutes of public comment, and he has not departed. So he and his wife have passed the test. And given Judd Drake's high level of experience and quality of his work that he's demonstrated, most recently in the Make and Bib unified government, I would entertain a nomination for appointment of Judd Drake for a 2-year term as lead Athens-Clarke County attorney.
May I have the privilege of moving for acceptance of, or making that motion?
Absolutely.
And I would love to see.
All right, so I have a motion from Commissioner Neesmith, second from Commissioner Thornton.
Can you add to authorize execution of a contract?
All right.
Sure, I add that.
All right.
You accept
And
that?
execution of contract.
I'm very good.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Judd, we're so glad to have you here. Everybody, Judd Drake, new Athens-Clarke County attorney.
Yeah.
All right, welcome. We hope your touring around the community and home hunt have gone well. So, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ms. Drake. All right. We now need a motion for entering into executive session upon conclusion of the agenda-setting meeting.
So moved.
All right. We have a motion for executive session from Commissioner Denson, a second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, hearing none, we will now move on to the normal order of business, our agenda-setting session. And so we'll have opportunities for public input on the consent agenda, on old and new business, and then individually on the zoning items. So I would ask first any members of the public who would like to speak to the consent agenda. Those are items number 1 through 15. Anyone who would like to speak to item 1 through 15, now is that time on the agenda setting consent agenda. All right. Seeing none, would any commissioner like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Commissioner Link.
Just number 2, just for a quick comment.
Right. Any other item commissioner would like to remove from the consent agenda? Jerry, we did a good job this month.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. All right.
Melissa always throws something into the works.
Commissioner Link, comment on item number 2, the North Lumpkin Street roadway and loading zone modification.
Yeah, so this is in the middle of downtown. It's a little lane reconfiguration, which gets some people flustered. So I just want to state publicly that this is that little stretch of Lumpkin Street right in front of Little Italy. which is 3 lanes. I never understood why there were 3 one-way lanes on that stretch of street. This is, as best I can tell, it's simply to remove one of those lanes and turn it into 2-lane one-way street, so we can accommodate a loading zone, which is desperately needed now that we got rid of that weird center loading zone configuration. That's been a headache. So yeah, with that public statement, I'm happy to put it back on consent.
Everybody happy to see that go back on consent? All right, so Gene, item number 2, back on consent. All right, going to move to public input on old and new business. So these are items 16 through 26. Any member of the public who would like to speak to items 16 through 26, now is that time.
Tyler Dewey, 1075 West Broad Street, speaking to item number 22, Hancock Avenue and College Avenue bicycle facilities. I'm speaking on behalf of Bike Athens in vigorous support of the project. Bike Athens, we have long talked and advocated for a tighter integration of bicycle facilities with repaving. Anytime you repave the street, it really allows the engineers to do whatever they want with that configuration within the limits that we allow. And in the past, it wasn't always a smooth process. But I think these bike lanes are the example of what can be done when somebody takes a specific deep dive and looks at the road widths and can carve out a really excellent top-of-the-line bike facility with having almost no impact on how motor vehicles move around the street. I mean, to be completely honest, I'd go even further, but we'll take what we can get. I mean, these will be some of the nicest bike lanes we have in the entire county. They'll be the first ones that are wider than the minimum, which is great to see. They'll be the first protected bike lanes, which is excellent to see, and it really will connect the greenway on the edge of that, on the sort of the edge of the downtown area with downtown and beyond. So it's just a wonderful project, and I really hope it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Anyone else like to speak to old or new business? Items 16 through 26. Commissioner, good to see you.
My name's Carl Jordan, 185 Kings Road, and I'm going to comment on your radar permit application. I've lived in the Timothy Road areas for 43 years, and a lot has changed on Timothy Road, but what hasn't changed is the dimensions of the road. My advocacy for a lower speed limit on Timothy Road can even be seen back in the 2006 May Court's long-range study, where that 35-mile-an-hour recommendation made it in among the citizen comments. What I'd like you to do tonight is consider 3 actions. One is to table your radar permit application until year-end when it really needs to be submitted. You have time. Second, go ahead and approve at your next meeting the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit for Timothy Road and College Station Road. Third, undertake some speed studies for some additional roads, Epps Bridge, Jennings Mill, Mitchell Bridge, and Cleveland Road. And finally, after we hope traffic slows down on Timothy Road, go ahead and reassess that road with a speed study that hopefully will confirm it for application inclusion. Right now before you is a recommendation for 40 miles an hour, and I just want to say a few words about that. It's derived from a speed study plus inclusion of an FHA model. I asked for consent to go into that model and see how various variables affected it, but I never heard back from anybody. So it's proprietary, but I did notice one thing. One is that it's based on 4.1 miles of Timothy Road. Well, that's from the Atlanta Highway all the way to the Macon Highway. Whereas the part we're really talking about, the applicable part, is between the Atlanta Highway and 441. After that, you have Berkeley Hills and you have Timothy Church, but it's about 0.7 of a mile with very little else. You have a number of, you're measuring 126 driveways. I counted those up, and in fact, you do have 126 driveways. But let me point out that 2 of those driveways are for the Academy Sports Shopping Center. One of those driveways is for Timothy Woods with 207 units in it. And in other words, these driveways don't begin to assess the effect of the impact of traffic. My time is up, and there's so much to talk about, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Any other input on old and new business tonight? Those are items 16 through 26. All right, seeing none, we're going to begin Oh, come on down.
Stuck in the chair, sorry. My name is Walter Smith. I live at 310 St. Ives Way in St. Ives subdivision. And first, let me thank you for your concern on traffic safety this evening. Secondly, I would like to second Mr. Jordan's request for a speed study on Elps Bridge Parkway. Elps Bridge, a lot of traffic comes on Elps Bridge off of 316, and many of the drivers haven't realized that they are in a residential area as opposed to the 316. And I personally believe that a decrease in the speed from 45 to 40 would certainly improve the opportunity for residents along that parkway to enter the parkway. And so I would like to ask that Elks Bridge Parkway also be included in a speed study to explore whether or not that would be a possibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other input on old or new business this evening? That's items 16 through 26.
All
right.
Are you asking us if we want to say something?
Asking the public.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Pay attention, Mike.
All right, we'll move on to commission conversation on old and new business. Any input on the hold item, the request from Carter Engineering Consultants for the project at 664 Hancock Industrial Way? Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, just a quick update. I've been in touch with Mike McCleary, the attorney on behalf of Stephen Smith, as well as Stephen Smith himself, the developer on that project, and they are putting together a document to share with us at the next meeting regarding to clarify their intentions regarding living wage jobs and economic development in that area, working with the child care center, what that's going to look like, as a way for the folks that they've spoken to previously to have a greater measure of certainty that these things are going to receive some meaningful progress and to give us a clear picture of what those things might look like.
Thanks for that update, Commissioner Parker. Any other input on that item? No. All right, we're moving on to item 17, renewal of the speed detection device permit and associated documents. Commissioner Hamby, I thought you might have something to say about this.
I'm sorry, I know I've been a pain about this for some time now. And I appreciate Commissioner Jordan and Mr. Smith getting up and speaking tonight about this area, especially Timothy Road and Epps Bridge. And I won't take up too much of your time tonight, but I will have a commission-defined option for you to look over, and I'll get with I guess Attorney Behrman or the new guy.
He's here until the end of the month, so acts fast.
So whoever can help me would be very much appreciated. It will be a commission-defined option that does ask for Timothy Road to be request that GDOT and the Department of Public Safety remove the following Timothy Road segment from the current speed detection permit. So it'll be from Atlanta Highway to Macon Highway, which is currently at 45. I'd like to have a motion put before you to consider lowering it to 35. And then also we'll do another. As far as what this agenda item is calling for, is asking us to approve the radar application, but part of this commission-defined option will also ask you if you wouldn't mind holding that application permit until after some additional speed studies can be completed, because I'd like to I'd like to add Epsbridge Road to that study list. I know Commissioner Harrod had some that he would like to add, and I'm sure you might like to have some in your districts added to that as well, so that we can see if the appropriate speed is there or not from that standpoint. So that's 3 items that I'll be asking for within the commission-defined option. And then I'd just like to point out, as you have some reading material in front of you, why I'm making the case, and I'll make it again at our voting session about this. You'll see on page 140, and I want you to compare the two. Right now we have Timothy Road speed study in front of us and the College Station Road speed study as well. And what I'm asking you to look at is on page 142 of the PDF. It's the crash data information. I find this very, significant and kind of disturbing at the same time. You'll see that crash data information, total number of crashes for Timothy Road are at 464. Total number of injury crashes are at 131. So crash rate average for similar roads is at 252. So look at that data there. Total number of crashes, 464 at Timothy. Total crash average for similar roads like Timothy should be at 252. The injury rate for similar roads should be at 75 and not 131. It should be at 0, really. So I point that out as a significant reason, I believe, for lowering the speed limit to 35. But I'm under no illusion that lowering the speed limit to 35 is all that we need to do. I mean, even this report says lowering the speed limit should be a last resort. So, I might be asking for something else. I've asked Manager Williams what the cost is of those, those solar-powered sort of speed signs that tell you how fast you're going, and if you're going too fast, it says you're going way too fast, slow down. There's some on Hawthorne and some on, I believe, King Avenue has some, and some other areas around town. And I don't know what they call us. Last time I heard they were around $4,000 a piece, but I could be wrong in that. So might also ask for approval for at least 2 of those that we could add along the Timothy stretch. I know we put some money in the budget there, but I guess I'm making the point that if we're going to lower the speed limit, we got to make sure people are aware that it's being lowered. But also we've got to start doing other things, not only on Timothy, but other areas as well to do some things. And we are, but our dollars are stretched and stuff like that. But if we're looking at speed limit and want to make sure that areas don't have this type of crash data associated with it, then we need to do some other things just besides lowering the speed limit. I will point to you as a comparison now. So remember those numbers, the total number of crashes on Timothy Road, which has a vehicle per day of 11,000, and just compare that 464 number to College Station Road. College Station Road is a 5-lane highway. Not highway, I don't want to say highway, it's a road. But Dr. Myers might jump over the table if, knock me upside the head if I say highway again, but it's a College Station Road, as a comparison, is 5 lanes, and it has 102 crashes.
What's the speed limit?
The speed limit is 45 on College Station Road.
45 or 35?
It's recommended to be dropped to 35. Okay. So y'all follow my point here. The Timothy Road speed limit is currently 45, has higher crash records, has higher crash injury rates. The recommendation from staff, and staff's just doing their job, I get that, but we need to do our job and recognize that I think it ought to be at 35. This recommendation for College Station it's at 45 right now. It's being recommended to drop to 35, yet it has a lower crash record than Timothy does. So I hope I'm making my point there in a good way. That I follow it in my mind, but my mind works quite strange sometimes. So anyway, I can draw a diagram if y'all need it.
Commissioner Link?
If I had my way, we'd have 25-mile-an-hour speed limits all throughout town. But from what I understand, and the manager maybe can correct me, these permits are issued based on speeds that the roads can accommodate. We can't, they won't allow us to just lower, they only allow us to lower the speed limit if there is some documentation and some record that a certain amount of cars are already going lower than that speed limit based on the conditions of the road. Is that correct?
That's right.
So it's up to us to possibly change the conditions of those roads with, striping and medians and things like that, that would force cars to travel at slower speeds. And as far as roads that aren't on this list, that don't have permits, can we go ahead and change those speed limits at our discretion? I'm thinking about neighborhood streets. There are some streets, main streets through neighborhoods that are 30, 35 miles an hour. Boulevard is 30 miles an hour. Barber Street, that little stretch of Barber Street between Boulevard and from what I understand, that's not on this list. That is 30 miles an hour, and then the other stretch further down towards Habitat is 35. I've always felt that that was not a safe speed, and I would bet that most people are not going 30 miles an hour, but the ones who are risking a crash. I'm thinking of Vincent Drive. The speed limit on Vincent Drive is 45 miles an hour. That is a residential street with no sidewalks, no curbs. I know that next month's work session, which again, I won't be here, we're going to be addressing technical standards from Transportation and Public Works. Does that have to do with things like road width and sidewalk width and things like that? Does it have relevance to traffic safety?
Yes, it's going to convey sort of what's being worked on, driveway widths and design, things of that nature.
Because I'd like to initiate a discussion by which we determine new speed limits based on things like roadway width. So we can start having some conversations about the safest speed, especially through neighborhoods and through residential areas. And especially through areas that are heavily trafficked by pedestrians, that have a mix of commercial uses nearby. I mean, that last little block of Prince Avenue is still listed on here as being in a school zone, but it's no longer a school zone. And every time I travel down there, I don't feel safe going more than 18, 20 miles an hour. But there's plenty of times when I've crossed there and there are people blasting through at probably 45. So I just feel like we do need to have a broader discussion about what are the safe speeds on our roads and what we can do to force drivers to travel at those safer speeds so we can get the proper permits, and what roads we do have control over. And I'd like to, possibly think about lowering the speeds on some of our narrow neighborhood streets, especially our older in-town neighborhoods that have very narrow streets, lowering those speed limits to, say, 15 or 20 miles an hour.
Well, I'll say any enforceable speed limits need to be supported by a traffic investigation. So as you just consider that as we talk about those things. And I will say this, I'll find out the answers to some of your questions and offer some other thoughts on, the ramifications of changing speed limits and the speed detection permit.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Neesmith?
I'd like to see Cleveland Road added to the list of studies. I know I see cars going down Cleveland. It's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. It's also a scenic road, officially a scenic road. And I see cars going 65 miles an hour all the time, and it's not safe. We don't have a lot of crashes, except with deer. Lots of crashes with deer. There's also a train track there, and I've seen cars screech to a halt to stop in time for that train. Anyway, I'd like to see Cleveland Road added, if possible, to the study.
Commissioner Hamby, a follow-up?
Yeah, just to add one more point to Commissioner Ling's point about the 85th percentile, and that's a state issue too, so that's something I think we still need to continue adding to our list about and when we meet with our state legislatures about how GDOT puts forth a criteria that we have to judge by, because, if a speed limit's posted at 45, most people are probably going to go 45 or higher. 50, they can at least go to 55. College Station Road, I will say this, if you go down College Station Road, you're going to see the police on College Station Road running the radar. Unfortunately, I've seen it many times. Well, not many, I don't want to say, but it's very enforceable on College Station. So that kind of explains why people would slow down on College to meet that 35 mile an hour recommendation. Timothy Road hasn't had the same level of enforcement over the years. They've picked up here recently. I've heard and noticed, so that's been good. But certainly changing the speed to 35 would slow some things down and help make the road safer overall in general, and hopefully reduce that crash record.
Commissioner Davenport.
I'd just like to add Old Lexington Road to that list as well. It's curvy, it's hilly, it's dark, there's a lot of deer out there. I think the edge is a little too fast for a complete residential road, so I'd like to add that as well to the list.
I'm gauging that this is not going to go on consent.
No.
You can if you just do what I just said, but that's okay if you don't.
We didn't put it on consent, Mr. Mayor.
That's right.
I've got an option I need to attach to it first, so.
See?
All right, any other comment on this matter? All right, we'll look for that commission-defined option. If everybody would collaborate to make sure we get the complete list of what we want modified and communicate with the manager to make sure that's appropriate given the nature of the permit that we're asking for. All right, number 18, the Firefly Trail Project, the Winterville Section Construction Contract Award. Commissioner Link.
So this is the portion of the Firefly Trail that is in Winterville. So there's still a gap between the funded sections, correct? I just want to remind everybody of that as we discuss the bridge project, the Trail Creek Bridge project, because there are different levels, the examples of the bridge, different costs, and we may need some of that money to actually complete the trail. This trail isn't really fulfilling its mission unless we can actually make some connection from downtown Athens to Winterville. So that's another discussion that's going to happen in next month's work session. I won't be here, so just wanted to get that out there.
Other commission input on this item?
Can we put it on consent?
Yeah, I'm happy to put it on consent, yeah.
We don't have the bid yet, so we need the final dollars. Before we move on, I do want to make mention of having great interest in completion from downtown to the county line for Firefly with dollars that either we have or that have already been voter approved. I think we can do that. I have no doubt that we can do that, and I want to see that full connectivity. And for me, that means that we look at earned interest from our existing SPLOST programs, which we can allocate toward this project. And as the SPLOST 2011 program comes close to sunsetting, that any dollars saved in existing projects are reallocated to Firefly. This has been a long time in the making, and it's time to say that Athens-Clarke County has fully stepped up to the plate. And I'll also say that I, as a rider, have some flexibility around surface, and so I'd be happy, particularly in that very shaded area that's not in a floodplain, to see an alternate surface that is going to get the connectivity. Whether that's asphalt or whether that's aggregate shale or something else that you've seen in many other communities. I think what everybody wants and needs is to be able to get from East Broad Street to Oglethorpe County. And then ideally, we're going to see Oglethorpe and Greene County come on board in a fully fledged way too. So moving on, item number 19 is the Beach Haven project, and this is acceptance of donated value and authorization of a conservation easement. Commissioner Neesmith.
This is an interesting way things happened here. We've been looking at this piece of land for several years and tried to buy it from its owner and didn't have the money to do it. The Oconee River Land Trust entered into a purchase agreement in March of 15 and then was awarded a grant from Riverview Foundation to acquire the project permanently with a conservation easement. So we reached now where we're being offered the 13 acres by ORLT, I believe, as part of the Beach Haven project with the proper conservation easements and so forth. So this is a good opportunity to grow Beach Haven just a little bit more, and this is an old Rowland property. Did I get that right, pretty much, Mr. Manager? Okay. So I'd like to see us move this to consent.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to add that, as we have these discussions about SPLOST projects, this vote on this agenda has relevance. I mean, it shows that this Beach Haven project is something that's been in the works for nearly 20 years. I mean, we have this green space plan that's originated in 2000. 2004, SPLOST had the Greenway acquisition funds that enabled the purchase of the property. So this next SPLOST offers the opportunity to actually, minimally develop the property and bring it up to a condition that can be enjoyed by the public and where it can become a functional part of the Greenway, which we have a Greenway network plan that's like 25 years old or so.
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner
I want to give a brief recent history lesson about Beach Haven. Yes, we owned the property, and yes, that beautiful old house was on it. But we had, as a government, we had no intention of taking care of that house. It was going to be demolition by neglect. And I had the pleasure of seeing that house when I was on the Planning Commission. When Lucy was chair, she took us out there for a picnic one day at that house and got to appreciate the property, the old the 1920s landscaping. And the commission wasn't, and I was a commissioner then, the commission wasn't interested in saving the house. But the ACHF, Historic Foundation, was. And our manager at the time said, tell you what, we can lease that to the Historic Foundation for $1. And then the Historic Foundation can raise money and do their own contracting, get their own contractors without going through our procurement and stabilize the house, and they did. So really, this new initiative from the Historic Foundation is an evolution of that process, where now it's, okay, now we've saved the house, we've saved the Camelback Bridge, now let's turn it into something that the public can enjoy. And so it's very important. It's very gratifying, and it's a jewel.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to add that, I see it as an important destination on that Greenway. Where as a tourist or, even just someone looking for something to do for the day can hop on the Greenway near wherever you live and walk or ride your bike, or hopefully hop in a kayak and paddle to Beach Haven and enjoy the many attractions that are there and will be there, hopefully.
Any other input on this item? Everybody okay with this moving to consent?
Yes, please.
All right, I'm going to move 19 to consent and want to thank once again the Riverview Foundation, who's helped us with a myriad of projects, including the Tallassee Forest and the Boulevard Woods Park. So kudos to them. We're moving on to 20, the Clayton Street infrastructure and transportation improvements. The agenda item is about a construction manager at risk contract award. Manager Williams, you want to briefly describe this alternate to some of the other project management mechanisms we've used?
Sure. As opposed to a simple low bid award, this is a complex project. We're asking the contractor to observe sensitive timing for the merchants downtown. When we get to the actual streetscape, it's going to necessitate coordinating with each individual store owner to try to retain access to the building so that they can continue their commerce. And so that's going to be extremely difficult, and coordination is going to be key. And so this is not an unusual project delivery method. What it does is it involves a construction manager or contractor, if you will, in design, and they can give constructability feedback as opposed to the architect just creates a design, the contractor gets it, things don't work out, and everybody's pointing fingers at each other. Here, the contractor's at the table helping to give instant feedback about how this might work. So how do you get them on board? What they do is they give you a percentage fee that they're going to add on top of whatever the work is, okay? And that's how you pick the contracting team based on a competitive procurement. Now, once they get in, they help with the design, they give the constructability, so part of what you pay for is some of those pre-construction services, okay? And ultimately, there's a final set of design drawings that is bid out to subcontractors. And so everybody knows what the costs are because we get to see what the subcontractors are billing. We know what the markup is, we know what their pre-construction fees are, we get to see the best bids that they get back from the subcontractors. At that point, they assume responsibility for that final contract cost, or otherwise a guaranteed maximum price. So the risk is then shifted to the contractor to complete the job for that work, for that amount. And so this was something that I'm familiar with that when I worked in the private sector that we used. And our engineers feel like that this is going to give us the most informed and sensitive design to make sure that we're able to be responsive to the merchants downtown and get this done in an appropriate way.
Thanks, Blaine. Commissioner Hamby.
Is this like a design build sort of scenario?
No, there's a separate architect, and they've already been working, as you know, T.Y. Lin. It's just bringing in the contractor towards the tail end of design and getting some instant feedback on, well, that's not going to work that way. Let's try it this way.
Okay.
And getting a set of design drawings at work.
Now, can we also get, and there's no rush on this, I guess, I don't know that we need it before this, but, well, maybe we do, a new timeline, because things have shifted quite a bit, and I'd kind of like to see a new timeline, and I'm sure some business owners downtown would like to see that as well.
Yes, thank you. And I asked Derek for that. He's recently given it to me, and I will share that with you because we wanted to kind of reset and see where we were.
Okay.
And I hope you'll be pleased. Part of that too, though, Commissioner, is getting this contractor on board and vetting the timeline with them.
Okay.
So I'll share with you our best
proposed
timeline,
draft timeline,
and then we'll revisit it once we've been able to sit down with the contractor and work through that.
Okay.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, Commissioner Hamby's reading my mind again. This is getting scary. I wanted to ask about the timeline, so I'll look forward to that information.
Check my medicine.
I know. Yeah, I mean, this project, God knows, has been a long time coming, and this seems like a really reasonable approach to have that one-point person who's not distracted by other duties. That this makes sense. So, yeah. Yeah, you want to move it to consent?
Let's go.
Well, it's a bid as well.
So we-
Yeah, so we've got to leave it at
Oh, okay.
But I do want to mention too that if y'all remember, we pivoted and had y'all approved funding and the appropriate personnel to begin the stormwater work downtown, and we've been working around some of the utility conflicts. We've resolved some. We did some redesign to avoid some of the larger ones. And so you may have noted some of that work going down there, and that's going to allow us to have a much more favorable schedule, I think you'll find.
Okay.
Great. We look forward to seeing that schedule. All right. Moving forward to item number 21, the Brooklyn Creek Interceptor improvements. This is along King Avenue and in some related areas. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, so the public meeting on this happened right about the time I was in surgery, so I missed it, but I'm just wondering if staff could share any of the public comments with me, because this is pretty much all in my district, just so I can, be aware of anything, just make sure that, this project is desperately needed every time it rains. It seems like we have a sewer overflow along this creek, so I'm looking forward to this work getting done. I know it's not going to be easy, but it's very needed.
We can do that.
Great, thank you. And I'm happy to put it on consent if it's eligible.
It is. Any other input on this item before it goes to consent? All right, G, number 21 is going to move to consent. All right, item number 22, the Hancock Avenue and College Avenue bicycle facilities. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, so we looked at this during our work session last week, and there was some discussion about the Creature Comforts driveway access and the conflicts with the parking spaces, and the design that was presented to us had the bike lanes outside the parking spots to allow those parking spots to remain and allow trucks backing out to have that extra space of the bike lane if necessary, and avoid any possible parking spots or cars and parking spots getting hit. I've heard from a property owner across the street on that street, and they're very concerned that the design that's showing up in the agenda is the one that has the bike lanes inside. And I know that, best practices, you want your bike lanes protected with parking. But I feel like on this street, it doesn't really make too much of a difference because it is such a low trafficked and definitely low speed street. By having, I mean, they're showing just a blocked out area where there should be parking spaces. So we're losing, what, 3 parking spaces here? And 2, okay. It's not that I'm a huge fan of parking, but I just feel like on this street, it just doesn't really make too much difference. When I've never been a confident cyclist, and when I did cycle to work every day when I worked at the Banner Herald years and years ago, I took Hancock, and I never felt unsafe on that street. And you know, when the scooters were still allowed, I scooted down Hancock in traffic. I mean, I feel like the conditions of that road and the traffic patterns of that road, I don't have a problem with the lane outside the parking spots on this 400-foot stretch of, you know, urban street.
Commissioner Edwards?
This is the best design possible to have the bicycle lane protected with the parking. And this design is responsive to the feedback we provided to transportation and the bicycle coordinator at the last meeting. This looks like a great plan. And this is where we need to be moving with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in this community. Protected lanes are superior to lanes shared with vehicular traffic. I can tell you there's just a degree of safety you get when you're separate from vehicular traffic that will increase use. It will make parents feel more confident to have their children ride their bicycle. Infrequent users will feel more confident using these lanes. I think staff has done a great job accommodating the request of the business owner to continue allowing a tractor-trailer loading area on this public road. This looks like a great design, and I support it.
Commissioner Denson?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Edwards. I think this is a good compromise. Just to clarify, so the one that's on our agenda for tonight, they went back, as Commissioner Edwards said, took out some of the spaces so that the trucks could pull in, and I believe we're able to move one so that there's only a total loss of, I believe, 2 spaces completely. So we're able to, at the cost of 2 parking spaces, which I understand, parking spaces are important, but so are safe pedestrian, cyclist thoroughfares. So by doing this, we're able to keep a consistent lane. The lane does not change. In the other model, the person would be coming down, once they crossed Whole Street, they would have to move, which makes it more dangerous, makes it less easy. This is going to be a consistent line going through. And I agree. This is what we spent a lot of money and work and volunteer hours to come up with an Athens in Motion plan. They studied all these different ways. They said, this is what we should be moving forward. This is the first time we're attempting it. I would hate to see the first time that we're attempting finally putting this work into action that we don't do it. I think we found a good compromise. And if the parking spaces are so necessary that we need to put them back, again, I brought up during the last time that we can put them back, but put them at time sensitive where people could not park them at the times that we have the truck deliveries come. I'm sure those trucks come they know when they come. So I'd be happy doing that as a compromise. But I do also believe these need to be protected bike lanes. And I think, heck, I bet you we actually save 2 cars from coming down that need to find parking spaces by actually adopting safe, cycling-friendly lanes here. And then that makes up for the 2 lanes we lose.
I'll say
Commissioner
something,
Hamby?
Commissioner. Yeah, I will. And I'm not disagreeing with any of what y'all were saying. I just do think that, one size doesn't always fit all. So from that standpoint, we've certainly heard from some business owners down there that about it's not necessarily about losing parking. It's about making sure to accommodate how they function with their business. And that may be true for some other businesses. We always got to look towards this particular business may not be there forever, but there may be somebody else that needs to do the same thing or something like that. So I don't necessarily see the see this as not accommodating what we're trying to achieve with our bike, Athens in Motion. And we want to make sure that when we do it the first time, Commissioner Denson, that we do it right, and most people, we still, I mean, Commissioner Gertz, he voted for this over there on Hawthorne Avenue. I'm just joking, Kelly, but we still hear about. It's always, Attorney Berriman can attest to this. That's always the one that people hold up as a model for why we shouldn't do bike lanes in Athens, and it's unfortunate. That is the case because it seems to work. But also, if you remember, a lot of our transportation folks about roundabouts, they wanted us to be able to put the roundabout and when we do it the first time in a place that's going to work well, and they did that and followed that model, and they're continuing to follow that model, and that's served us well. So I guess I'm not as, like Commissioner Link said, I mean, traffic downtown goes slow. We don't, and people are able to ride their bikes in the middle of the road if they want to, and it's not been a problem. And but here we will have the bike facilities to accommodate that, and go from there. So that's all I've got to say.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'm just reluctant to piss off a downtown business owner by taking away their parking when this is someone, it's not that they're against the bike lanes. I mean, I feel like, especially when we do have an urban environment, we need that flexibility. And I feel like the design that staff originally presented as their recommendation was a compromise. And I think that in order to gain the support of the greater community and the non-cyclists in this community, we need to be willing to compromise. There are standards for best case scenario and design. And I would normally push for that. If this was a higher speed road, I would certainly be pushing for it. But this is, I drove down that stretch 3 times today, and every time checked my odometer, and I was never going more than 18 miles an hour. Because you're either turning off Pulaski or you're about to hit the light to turn on to Pulaski, or you've sat at the light up at Hull Street. It's just a very, very low speed road. And, quite frankly, I feel that, on our low speed roads, we shouldn't necessarily need bike lanes because you should be able to share the street with traffic. I mean, most cyclists are going faster than 18 miles an hour. For fear of putting a bad taste in the mouth of the non-cycling public by forcing through a design that, a slight tweaking could alleviate any concerns, I'd like to talk to staff about returning to that original recommendation. And I'd like to have a few words with the folks at Bike Athens and Athens in Motion about their thoughts. Because there are plenty of people out there who are opposed to cycling infrastructure. So if we can be supportive of the infrastructure that is least likely to put them off, we can be less likely to get the opposition that we know we're going to get, and we do get.
Commissioner Parker and her gold bike have some ideas.
Hey, yeah, someone that loves biking safely and really likes the idea of having these protected lanes. And imagines that folks that are less frequently on the roads will feel more comfortable driving in them as well. I see this plan as the compromise, the middle ground that I think will make both inexperienced and new cyclists and the business owners meet in the middle. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Which plan are you referring to?
The plan presented in the agenda today.
Two of them.
Well, the agenda item. Right?
The agenda item, yeah.
Is there two? There's two.
No, there's only one.
No, there's just one.
The one in the packet hugs the curb.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Commissioner Davenport?
No, I just want to echo Edwards, Commissioner Edwards, Parker, and Denson. I'm not a bike rider. Y'all know I'm not a bike rider. You might be. I'm too fat to be riding a bike. But this is a great plan, great compromise. It's minimally invasive. The design looks really well, and it's just, I just think of the plans, I think this is the one that we should be going for. That's it.
Commissioner Edwards, you have additional input?
No. Well, I'll say one thing real quick. This road is owned by the citizens of Athens-Clarke County, and these parking spots are owned for the benefit of the citizens of Athens-Clarke County. These parking spots are not owned by any property owner individually. So as a governing body, my philosophy I try to apply to this job is to do the most good for the most people. So I'd just like to put a fine point on that. Downtown Athens, Georgia, these spots aren't owned by anybody in particular. This road, these parking spots, they belong to the government, the citizenry as a whole. And this design does a great job serving the whole. Thank you.
Commissioner Denson.
Yeah, I guess, I don't think I ever heard back. I brought it up at the work session, but Mayor Williams, is it possible that we could, if they needed to have those 2 parking spots put back in place, that we could have them time sensitive? Do we have any other spots throughout downtown where we could say, don't park here at this time because we have deliveries coming through?
We talked about that concept when we talked about going from 3 lanes to 2 lanes. We didn't end up actually acting on that.
Okay.
You could have folks that don't listen and block, you got one car blocking through there. I would imagine that it's going to be a common time for bicyclists coming through there in normal business hours.
Yeah, it wouldn't be because of cyclists. It would be because of the parking of cars there.
I got you.
Yeah.
Loading for the creature comforts.
Right. For loading of the creature comforts, that we'd say those parking spaces you cannot park there during loading times.
But if they were there, then we'd have to tow them, and I guess the truck would have to wait on all that to happen.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do we have other spots throughout downtown that have? I feel like I've seen them before.
We've got loading zones that double as it used to be cab stands.
That's it though.
That was a dual use zone. We can look into that.
Okay. And then I guess the other thing, I get a little concerned because I'm kind of hearing 2 arguments against this. One being for the parking spots, and I do get it, but I don't think that should come before us making, again, safe bikeways for our citizens here. The other argument I'm hearing is it sounds like one that we're talking about access to the businesses. It sounds like one that's actually against protected bikeways in general, and that worries me a little bit. Because if we're talking about that, this kind of structure limits access to the businesses. Can you clarify that a little bit, Commissioner
Yeah, I
Hamby?
can. I'm not against buffered bike lanes at all. I'm not. But I was gonna make another suggestion here. I'm not as worried about the parking spaces there as well. I was just trying to make sure that we at least try to accommodate some of the businesses that are having the deliveries made and such as that. I just think that's an important part of downtown business, having a business downtown, that you want to be able to get your product there. But I might make a suggestion here, if y'all could, I don't know if staff has considered, if you look on Whole Street, what if, and I may get yelled at for this by some folks, but what if we just took out all the parking along, hang on, let me get, dadgummit. I'm sorry, Mayor, if you give me just a second to get back to where I'm.
That's all right. I'm looking at the side street on my.
Trying to
copy as
make a
well.
point. Can somebody tell me how many spots we're looking at along there? 6 spots?
On Whole Street?
Not on Whole Street, but
Front
they're
on
on
Hancock?
fronting on Hancock in front of, could we not transfer those parking spaces over to Whole Street? Because Whole Street has, you've got your right turn lane only, or you can go straight or go left. Can we just not work with, why not just work with, it's a one-way street. Why not take one of those lanes and make it for parking? You could get actually more than 6 spaces there that could accommodate those businesses right around the corner there. So you get rid of you actually get rid of all the parking spaces on Hancock. And
It's whole between Doherty and
Hancock.
Right. Is there a reason why we couldn't put parking spaces along that stretch to accommodate? And then that way you have you actually have more room
Net
for
parking.
Yeah, you can put a delivery lane there or something like that, and parking.
Well, we can certainly look at that.
I mean, y'all see what I'm trying to describe there, right?
Yeah.
Right,
So
Commissioner?
you could
So the
yield
two-
an increase
two-
in parking spaces.
Yeah, around the corner, add a couple of
Yeah,
spaces to
there's
make
a-
up for the couple.
There's
that
a
are being
right turn only
Or
lane.
at all.
Yeah, just get rid of the right turn only
Yeah.
lane, which
Right.
the
You don't-
traffic on that block is
Right.
minimal.
Also, if you want, it's not yellow marked. I know for a fact people park there anyways because it's not yellow curbed.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's no parking meters.
Well, see,
And
I mean, I'm thinking you could fit at least 6 parking spaces along that stretch, if not more.
And also, if we're going to talk that way, I mean, I agree that that's closer to, but also if we're talking about the overall parking, from what I see here on between College and Lumpkin, we're one of these places. I thought we were gaining some spots. No, maybe not.
Well, and the other buildings behind there already have parking lots associated with them, so.
There's a net loss out here outside of City Hall because we went to parallel versus diagonal.
How many are we losing out here?
If I can look at that. I
Handful,
think-
3, 4.
I think
Going from 26 to 22.
4. Yeah, I think it's 6 overall.
Well, I can tell you that the property owner who's the parking spaces directly in front of his building are being lost, had several concerns, not just losing the parking in front of his building, but the fact that there's still a possibility of those existing parking spaces getting hit by a truck backing out. It's still kind of close. And I would like to, hear from staff about what they observed, because apparently they did some on-site observation, and that's how they came up with that originally recommended design, because they saw some close calls with parking spaces. And I think his concern also was the idea that, he saw this bicycles on the passenger side as more dangerous because passengers might be less likely to acknowledge that there would be traffic on the right side of the car. Whereas I know when I parallel park on the street and I'm getting out of the driver's side, I know that there's traffic here and I'm going to look. There was that concern too. I don't know, I would like to talk with folks in Bike Athens and their thoughts on this. I mean, I wouldn't even be thinking about this if there was significant volume and speed on this. I mean, by significant, if I felt like cars were even going 25 miles an hour and, with any frequency at all, I'd definitely be advocating for the full protection of the parking. But this is such a low speed, low volume street. I just feel like is it really worth the hassle?
Would you mind if I make one more point, then I'll hush? But, and I don't disagree with you, Commissioner Ling, but I am trying to further the compromise along to something else. I mean, if we're going to make a buffered bike facility, let's make it a buffered bike facility. Let's not.
I mean, if we can
I'm sorry.
eliminate the argument about the parking being gone by increasing some parking spaces, I mean, in a perfect world, there'd be fewer people needing parking spaces and they'd be hopping on their bikes instead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't finished just quite
sorry.
yet, but if we can, if we're going to make it a buffered bike facility, I know in our plans that we saw, they had some planters that are out there. I mean, that'd look great if we can, accommodate some parking around the corner on Whole Street, and then put some of those planter things out where those parking spaces would have been, or something. I don't know. You don't want, we're not trying to create a problem for ourselves.
That
but
could get hit by the trucks, though, the loading trucks.
yeah, I mean, if you see where I'm going to
Green paint.
Yeah, something to really truly make it a buffered facility instead of those little pylon things that stick up. Those things I just don't think are all that attractive. But I don't know if y'all would be curious about how many parking spaces we can get over around the corner there, but it might be a good bit of compromise.
I'm interested in the whole conversation, and I'm happy to say I think staff is not looking at flex posts for any iteration of this project, which are not a favorite of mine either. Any new input on this item?
Yeah, just one thing. I think the green paint is effective in many ways. Take that green paint on down the street. Passengers going to see the green paint. Automobiles are going to see the paint when they're parking. I think it's something I'd like to be considered anyway.
take it all the way down the street?
Yeah.
That green paint is expensive.
Commissioner Edwards?
I know Manager Williams sent an email out later that maybe Commissioner Link didn't see, but he addressed the concern about car doors opening through the
Okay, I don't think I
passenger
saw that.
side, and that this buffered bike lane plus the buffer has a greater width than the width of a car opening.
Okay, so it accommodates car doors,
Yeah.
okay. That was a
Yeah.
concern.
Steer towards the
No,
sidewalk, not
it's
towards
a 2-foot
oncoming
buffer,
traffic.
so 8
Okay.
feet total. Yeah.
I like Commissioner Hamby's idea about Hull Street, if we can close that right turn lane and put a couple spots there to where we have just a net zero, then obviously that's optimal. Good suggestion.
Yeah, that could,
I come up with them every now and then.
All right.
because you're reading my mind.
That could work.
So a little more workshopping underway. All right. Moving on to the intersection improvement at Hawthorne and Oglethorpe, item number 23. Anyone like to chew on this?
Oh, that's my district too.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing this intersection improve because it's kind of a mess and has been for a long time. And, I took a better look at the design. Wait, now I got lost here. And, while I would like to see some further improvements down Hancock in front of the YMCA and between the YMCA and Bishop Park and increase the pedestrian connectivity between those facilities in the foreseeable future, I feel like this is a good direction for now. I think that it's going to greatly improve the safety of folks exiting the YMCA and entering it because it kind of eliminates the double lanes. I'm trying to call it back up. So yeah, I'm pretty happy what we see before us.
Commissioner Denson?
Yeah, I guess this question goes for staff. We had discussed, and Drew had brought up the possibility of us having, combined with this, the path going through Bishop Park, it's a pedestrian path, and that didn't see that added to this. And I'm wondering if that's still possible, if we ran into some kind of problems with that.
Maybe just a question of how we pay for it, if that's part of the intersection improvement versus, the path, but I'll verify for you, sir. Thank you for asking again.
Could we have staff just sort of figure a scale of costs so we know what that looks like so we can look at some funding sources?
Yeah, I'd like us to look into that so that, and possibly have a CDO that would have that put in place. Because I agree, if we're going to go through and do this work here, that corridor is not really safe for pedestrians. And of course, we have a massive park, kind of like our most important, oldest park here. And it's not safely accessible from this intersection. So if we're going to do it, let's do it right.
And thank you. That would be a CDO, and we can work with you on that. The agenda item was based on the concept that was proposed.
Okay.
And then.
Okay, well, I'll get with staff so we can prep up a CDO for that then.
Any other input on this item?
Are we still talking about the Hawthorne Avenue?
Hawthorne,
and
Oglethorpe.
And Commissioner Denson, you were talking about, I'm sorry, what was your?
So there was discussion, and Drew said that it's already I think it's a tier 2 project, but it would be connecting the sidewalk that kind of comes down Hawthorne Avenue, going towards the baseball fields, if you're looking at the map there.
I got you. I was going to add something to that. I was hoping that's what you were referring to. I'm sorry. Got distracted there, but and you brought this up at the work session about the fence and the hedges there to open it up. Is your Commission of Fine Option going to ask us to take down those fences?
It would at least taking down the gates at this time, yeah.
I'd be fine with taking. I mean, I think we ought to open up that park.
We can remove the whole thing, but that's something that I know Leisure Services.
So I mean,
yeah, Leisure Services was going to look at it, so I guess that's a thing that we'll have to deal with staff to try to figure out a way. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, take down that fence.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is kind of part of the Bishop Park master plan, but it didn't make the SPLOST list, so we don't know where those funds are going to come from. So that's another discussion to have when we talk about that final SPLOST list. Is the importance of the pedestrian connectivity that Bishop Park enables or can enable. I live, maybe a mile from the YMCA as the crow flies, but if I want to walk or bike there, it's going to be closer to 2 miles because I got to go around the park and make sure I stay on the side of the road that has the sidewalk. So, that's another reason to make sure that we can kind of fast track this pedestrian connectivity.
All right, so we'll get a little bit of research done and communicate with everybody here. All right, moving on to item number 24, the permanent encroachment request to install fiber cable by the University of Georgia. Blaine, you want to talk just a little bit about the contours of this?
Sure. So the university police are wanting to expand their camera security system and they're partnering with Georgia Power, and it's going to necessitate them to put some fiber optic cable in the right-of-way. They've asked for this type of thing before when they ran fiber optic cable out to the new vet med. And these types of things happen from time to time where they need something from us and we'll need something from them, and we generally collect those, and at a point in time, and you may remember some of those where we've worked things out moving forward. So I talked to the police chief. He's in support of the project. Our police will be able to access any video that comes from those if any incidents happen. So that's what the request is, not unlike the one that was from the hospital on consent.
All right. Move this item to consent.
Yes.
Okay. Gene, number 24 is moving to consent. Doing good work tonight. All right, number 25, the stormwater fee review phase 2. Blaine, could you talk about kind of the bigger chunks of this item?
Yes, absolutely. And I know the technical memo there was kind of lengthy, but what you're being asked to do here is accept this technical memo, which will facilitate some additional work, which will be brought back to you for consideration. And I'm trying to pull up that summary here, and my computer isn't. Give me 1 second, please, Mayor.
No problem.
I meant to pull that up before to be ready for you. Almost there. Okay. So really there's just a few things here that this will facilitate. You've got the technical memorandum 2, and there's a few things that are being recommended by this memo. One is that we move forward with an updated impervious surface audit from the aerial imagery, and that will form a more accurate basis for the billing. Once that's updated, then if you've no doubt looked through there, what they want to do is they want to kind of adjust the goalpost to make it more equitable from where the ERU breakouts were. There were tiers before, small, medium, large, and they felt like it was too far towards the bottom where more folks were falling into a higher charge. And so they want to, as we understand the more accurate data, then we can move it to make it more equitable. So the residential tiers would be updated. And at the same time, they would consider an addition of a 4th tier for some unusual parcels that didn't quite fit the definition of the others. So once this new fee structure is put together, then a couple other things will happen. They would recommend that we update the structure of the stormwater bill and also move forward with the adoption of an enhanced credit program, which they've kind of outlined here. But if you accept this technical memorandum, then staff will go back and refine this and then come back to you for approval and incorporation into the ordinances.
Commissioner Denson.
Manager Williams, so how similar is this to what was presented to us at the work session? Pretty much the same?
Based on this, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Because that all looked pretty good, and I really, yeah.
Commissioner Thornton.
I looked at it and tried to, I just want it pulled off because I just need to make sure I understand this, and I don't. And I think I do, but I really need more clarification. For that reason only, I would like to pull it off of consent.
Well, if I could offer this, perhaps we could meet with you in the coming week and go through it with you, and if you still feel that way, you can approach the mayor about that, or
We can meet and, like you said, but I still want it off.
Mayor.
So it's on discussion now.
Yeah, it's done on consent.
Oh, did you mean
Commissioner
off
Link?
altogether?
I want it off until you and you can
table
explain. I just don't want it with the group of everything else. So what do you suggest?
So it's not on consent now, it's still for discussion.
Okay, so we could table.
So it'd be individually commented upon
Yeah.
by the public.
No,
That'd be-
she just said table it.
Yeah, I would like to table it until I understand
All right.
this a little bit
I
better. So
definitely
what-
recommend some time with staff.
Yeah, so what's the best thing I'm suggesting?
So I'm going to say, sit down with stormwater staff, have them walk you through it, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, whatever, yes, sir.
Then if you don't like it, you can make a motion to table it.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I like this. I'm really excited about this opportunity for credits. I'm curious to know, and I know this hasn't completely been fine-tuned yet, but what if, say, you have a property that has a septic tank and you install a gravel driveway and you also have some rain barrels? Do you get multiple credits? Would that be an opportunity to increase your credit and lower your stormwater fee if you did more of these things?
Yes.
And you volunteer, say you also, there's an opportunity
You
to
can
volunteer?
get multiples, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'd show the credits on the bill,
Okay.
because right now it's netted out and folks don't really understand.
And there'd be a pretty clear and accessible procedure for applying for those credits?
That's the consultant's recommendation, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I do want to go on record that I do like the tax credits. I like the presentation. One of the problems I found in my district, other than what I told you earlier, we have had tax credit. I mean, we've had credits before. A lot of residents don't know about it. A lot of folk even have gone to the planning department when they found out about it. They didn't get no help. I mean, some of the staff didn't know, and they had heard about it at the work. So I need to make sure I understand what I'm putting out there. So I do like the credits. I just want to make sure I understand it when people ask me questions.
I understand. And this is a much more robust credit program than we previously had. So always education and awareness is crucial. And to that end, let me just sort of remind folks where we are with this. Phase one had to do with level of service. So what do you want the utility to do? We talked about adding an extra crew, maybe expanding some of the our zone of influence, maintenance, things of that nature. And then we also talked about the live stream replacement program and the capital impact that has, and how much do you want the utility to support, how much do you want SPLOST to support, which might go into your current conversations now. And so back in December, the Commission said, okay, here's the level of service we look for, which allowed staff to go back and kind of work on how the fees might be structured in order to, be able to pay for the level of service that the Commission wanted to see. And we had to do that, and we have to update and find out what's actually out there before we can bring you a final product. So that's just sort of the high level for the public.
Can you tell us what the level of service that you're targeting is now? I don't remember.
Yes, there were several facets to that. Yeah, 353 pages of agenda,
Oh, no, I know.
I think that was one of the history items here.
Small.
A lot of history items going back into the early 2000s.
Yeah, a lot of history.
Okay. All right. It was to include maintenance of a public zone of influence at pipe outlets. Used to be we drew it right at the right-of-way line, but we recognized that the water coming through there impacts a little bit deeper. There's the addition of a 2-person crew for televising and inspecting storm pipes. There was adding a 2-person crew for enhanced operation of vacuum trucks for pipe cleaning. And then there was that funding of existing pipe replacements. And if you'll remember, I think the cost for that was $22 million, and the staff recommendation at the time was that half of it would be paid for out of the utility and half of it would be paid out of SPLOST, so that the impact didn't fall all on the stormwater utility. So that's what the phase one level of service looks like. And so now we're building the fees and the credits and structures so that we have a financially viable utility.
Do you suppose we'll ever get to the point where we can take a situation like I have one of my constituents where the water's coming from the street from all directions and going into a pipe on his property and going to the river behind his house, and that pipe has collapsed, and it's his responsibility to fix it? Are we ever going to be able to? It doesn't seem fair.
Well, I'd have to look at that case too, whether that was private property, and we did talk in the level of service.
Private property.
If y'all wanted to do private property maintenance, and that was going to be a much bigger cost than what was ultimately decided.
Well, for the sake of being argumentative to the property owner, that water is not private property. It came from the street, from all of his neighbors' houses, and went into a pipe that he has to maintain, and it's collapsed, and it's going to cost him $25,000 to fix that pipe. He's not happy, and I don't blame him. It's not his water.
Commissioner Denson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just because there's been so much confusion and stuff about stormwater, and that's caused some of the ill feelings towards the stormwater fee. Commissioner Thornton is right. Like, there are currently credits, and just for the public who might be watching or listening, like, right now, I would say the vast majority of people are not able to get those credits. You have to basically be teaching environmental science curriculum, be a farm, already have a riparian water service area on your property, or have a detention pond. I mean, we're talking massive, large. So if we go towards what we're talking about here, instead you'll be able to get credits for, having a rain barrel, or having a rain garden, or having more tree coverage in excess of what is required by the government. Septic tank maintenance. If you don't have any of these things, you can go and volunteer for Rivers Alive or Adopt a Stream, and you get a credit. Like, we are making this where almost anybody can do some work that's going to help their community and help our watershed network. And in return for doing that, you're going to get a decreased bill. And that's the way this kind of credit program should work, along with making our pay structure more equitable. So I think I hope that this is something that that we can really kind of have. We need some education with this to get this out to people. But I think this is what the people of Athens have been asking for. I know I've had constituents saying that, like, look, I'm doing these things to my property to try to help out, but I'm not receiving the credit for it. So I think this is something that's going to this is what people have been asking for, but we need to definitely do some education to make sure everybody understands it, and therefore they can take advantage of these expanded credits.
Well, let me just say that you're being asked to accept the memorandum, which means you agree with it in principle, but it's going to come back to you in its final stages. So this is not just for the public to know. This isn't being decided, should it stay on, and you act on it. It's not. It's just giving staff some direction on kind of where we're headed. So.
All right. Commissioner Link?
So we need $22 million to ensure that our roads don't collapse over those culverts, correct?
That's how much of this corrugated metal pipe replacement that we think that live streams are being conducted under. The topography of Athens, so there's a lot of that.
And we've had some serious issues with several in just the past couple of years. So the plan was for half of that $22 million to come from a SPLOST project to maintain lower stormwater fees, but that project didn't make the recommended list.
That's
so
right.
We're going to see higher stormwater fees unless this body makes some decisions and comes up with $11 million to add to the SPLOST list. So that's another part of that discussion that's going to happen next month when Commissioner Denson and I aren't here.
All right, let's move on to planning and zoning items. I'm going to relocate.
You know what? Come here, let me tell you something. Let's get you one of those little things and because I can hear your size.
You're actually worse than me. Hey, Mike?
You can feel it.
Hey, Mike? I think he's size and grown more than you do. He's size and grown more than you do. He's size and grown more than you do. In fact, he's big about this. He's big about this.
All right, as everybody knows, we'll get first staff presentation for each of these items, then have an opportunity for citizen input, and then come to commission conversations. So Brad Griffin, Planning Director, is going to kick it off with 445 Tallassee Road.
Thank you, Mayor. First item tonight, we have 4 for you this evening, 445 Tallassee Road. It is a special use in an RS8 zone for a religious center. This is one that you actually saw, those of you that were here last year. They brought this through on the same property, but it was to the west of where it's sitting now. It was approved. They asked for the same variance for sidewalk. It was not approved. When they started looking into some of their engineering, the topography was such that they felt that it would be a significant cost savings to move it. Because it's a binding plan, they've got to bring it back to you for that approval. So again, it's the same use. The square footage within the building has increased, but that is through the use of mezzanines. The footprint of the building is effectively the same. Some more seats in it as well. Parking has gone up a little. Two-way entrance drive still off of Tallassee. There was a house to remain on the original plan, and it is still there. And I can show you that in a minute. And it is compatible with the current traditional neighborhood future land use designation. There you see on the left and the right, the red box on the left was the 2018 boundary approval, and you see it just kind of moved over on the same parcel. Existing conditions, and you see that house in the middle here. See that? Now, on the plan that was approved last year, which is this one, that's the house. And what they're wanting to do, and you can see it here, same house, they've just flipped the church to the other, or the mosque to the other side of that house, just to give you a little bit of relation where they are on the property. Same elevation that was presented a year ago. And the same variance request. The Planning Commission considered the variance and is recommending to deny that variance for the sidewalk along Tallassee Road, which is in keeping with the 2018 approval. With regard to the 2019 special use, they are recommending approval with some conditions. Again, the frontage sidewalk be installed with an additional 15 feet of right-of-way for a future multi-use path along Tallassee. There are some parking lot revisions that need to be made, and a condition regarding the conserved canopy. I think I can show you this. It'll make a little more sense to you. Okay. With regard to the parking lot revisions, what we've got here is a design. They've got more parking than they need to meet their minimums. With this configuration, if you enter this back run of parking and get part of the way down and it is full, there's nowhere to go. You end up ultimately having to back out. So what we will have them do is they probably lose these 4 parking spaces, and it just becomes a continuous loop, and then it gives them another tree island. Still keeps them within their minimums. It works for them, but they seem to be okay with that as a condition. And then we also wanted to make sure that there was protection of, they're showing this as an undisturbed area. This is some property between the special use property and an adjacent lot that has a residential dwelling on it. Some of the areas to the back, you see undisturbed area, conserved canopy. That area just simply said undisturbed area, and so we wanted to ensure that while we don't want to completely eliminate the visibility of the development from the street, we also want to be sensitive to that adjacent property to the right-hand side and some protection. So we're asking that the vegetation be maintained in a specific manner or supplemented where needed. And with that, the Planning Commission recommendation denial of the variance, approval of the special use conditions, you all will vote on both of those at your next meeting separately.
First, we're going to ask for public input on this item. All right. Seeing none, we're going to go to commission conversation. This is in Commissioner Neesmith's district.
Well, I think staff and the planning commission did an excellent job in their review of this, and I'll be supporting it.
Any other input on this item?
Sure you don't have anything more to say?
You told me not to. You said be quiet.
Brief I've ever heard you be.
All right, we're moving on to 2700 Jefferson Road.
Okay, 2700, this is a straight rezone with a future land use map amendment, type 1, straight rezoning. You don't get a lot of these. The request is to change future land use from traditional neighborhood to employment, and from an old conditional use in an RS-15 zone, which the conditional use was for Athens Country Club many years ago, to an industrial rezone. 3 acres that the applicant has entered into an agreement with Athens Country Club to purchase. The stated purpose within the report is an expansion of an existing operation, which is an organic hydroponic greenhouse operation that is currently in place and has been there for quite some time. They are looking to expand that. Where we got into an issue from a staff standpoint was that while it was pretty clear in their report that what they want to do is expand the operation, there were no voluntary use restrictions imposed by the applicant. We generally, from a staff standpoint on a straight rezoning, do not get into restricting or pulling out specific zoning or specific uses. And so where we were with it was, and we still are in support of it, but we approached it from a standpoint that that additional 3 acres upon its rezoning, if approved, could be used for any heavy industrial use that is currently a permitted use within the industrial area. So heavy manufacturing, heavier operations. And I'll talk about that a little more in just a second. But there's the property coming off Athens Country Club, if approved. And you can see the existing greenhouse operation is here, and I got a picture for you in just a minute. That's the 3 acres proposed to be carved off. And there's a little bit of picture, Paradise Boulevard down here in the very bottom right corner, and their driveway that comes up in. And then this is a residential development town square that has kind of gone through several iterations of development over the past 15 years, probably 10 to 15 years. But you see that last portion of it here. These are proposed residential lots upon its completion that could be built out. That's existing RS-15. This is already existing industrial where the greenhouses are. Proposed in existing zoning. In the Planning Commission recommendation, as you see here, it would allow technically for any of the intensive industrial uses that are currently within the I zone. It does not create an isolated district. It's simply an expansion of an existing industrial operation. They are recommending, based on the staff report, an approval of the future land use and also an approval of the zoning with a condition that a 100-foot undisturbed tree buffer be provided up in the corner. We've shown you a little picture here. That's what 100 feet looks like right now. That was a staff-generated condition that we presented to the Planning Commission based largely on the fact that there were no use restrictions in place. And so we were trying to provide some protection where we could if it were to be another use. That is certainly something, it's our understanding in talking to the applicant that they already have kind of construction and development plans ready to go to expand that hydroponic operation, and they were planning on being closer than that. They would be within that 100-foot area as well as along this, if I can get this a little bit more up in here too, with additional greenhouses, which is really not an intensive noise generator or a real significant impact, but without some type of a further condition that would restrict the use. That's where we were with the 100-foot buffer. So I think he is here this evening, and our representative is, and will speak to you a little bit, but that was the basic premise for our 100-foot buffer that was recommended by the Planning Commission to be approved as a condition.
Thanks, Brad. Public input on this item. 3 minutes, give your name and address.
My name is Bentley, address 185 Paradise Boulevard. I'm the applicant of the proposed rezone. I was happy to learn that the Planning Commission last week approved our rezone request from residential to industrial. There was one restriction outside of the code they requested. This was a property offset of 100 feet, as Brad mentioned. I'm requesting that with this use, this was a property offset of 100 feet. I'm requesting that with use restrictions on the proposed property and rezone, we can do the 25-foot offset with a heavily landscaped buffer. What we're trying to accomplish is purchase the 3 acres from Athens Country Club, which is zoned residential, to add to our existing 8 acres of greenhouse agriculture space, which is zoned heavy industrial. I don't know if that's the right term, but in order to do this, we have to combine the existing property with the 3-acre purchase from Athens Country Club and have one zoning designation across the entire property that fits greenhouse agriculture. With the proposed 100-foot offset, this does not work. We can't add on to the existing greenhouses with the 100-foot buffer. I would like for you to consider the standard 25 50-foot offset for this project. Taking into consideration, we would be including the existing 8 acres to have use restrictions that currently don't have any. So the property that sits there now that is heavy industrial, where the greenhouses sit, use restrictions would be imposed on that property as well as the additional 3 acres. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Any other public input on this item? Seeing none, go to commission conversation. This is Commissioner Link's district.
Yeah, I'm interested in having a conversation with the applicant about those use restrictions. I think that can achieve the ends we're looking at, and reducing that buffer. What is the required buffer for, say, commercial office or light industrial? Like the 100 foot is required for heavy industrial?
100 foot is larger than any of the current buffer requirements now for general commercial adjacent to residential. You get a choice of 3. It's either a 10-foot fence buffer, where it's a 6-foot fence between 5 feet of landscaping on either side, or a 20-foot fully planted buffer, or a 50-foot natural buffer. So the 100 was even more than that, but based on proximity to town square, and because it was just a little triangle, that's why we ended up recommending the 100. Now, you absolutely could, as a commission, find an option. You could request there to be a use restriction or even it may be a single use, or it may just be eliminating some of the heavier uses. We're going to need to think a little bit more about the other part that he's asking for, because I'm not sure, the only property that is technically being rezoned right now with this condition is the 3 acres you see in the red. I'm not sure we can pull that across, nor are we recommending. I mean, if this were to be approved with a 100-foot buffer, it's only that triangle that you see. It does not, upon combination with the balance of the growing operation, that 100-foot buffer doesn't carry across that property line onto existing industrial. They still have the same amount. So, but I think you could get under commission and find an option where you want to go with this, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah. The applicant wanted to add something. Is that kosher?
You can request input from the applicant.
Yeah, if you could please.
I was just suggesting that by doing the recombination plat and including the existing 8 acres with the 3 acres, use restrictions would be put on the entire property. I hear what he's saying, but if I'm wrong on that and it's only use restrictions on the 3 acres, what I was saying is I'm willing to put use restrictions on the entire property because it does border town square.
That's what I thought you were
That would
saying.
require you to start the process all over again, sir.
Would it?
That would require you to start the process all over again,
Okay.
just saying. So
Is
work with-
that the
work with-
case?
It may be that you and I and the applicant, if you're interested in it, could sit down and.
Yes,
and-
I would-
and
I'd
can
like
kind
to
of
do
Get
that.
you to where, I mean, I certainly appreciate the willingness to use restrict the current property that's already zoned industrial. I'm not sure anybody's asking him to do that at this point, or if you did a commission to find option, you would simply use restrict 3 acres. That is a separate zoning, and then you could, if you had a comfort level to reduce the buffer based on that use restriction, you could absolutely do that as part of it as well.
I mean, I think that would come out beneficial in the long run if the property use were to change, because the rest of the property surrounding it is residential.
But we can have that discussion, sir.
Okay.
All right, yeah, I definitely recommend the 3 of you
Mhm.
have an opportunity to sit down. Any other input on this item? All right, we have a couple of updates.
Okay.
Brad's going to bring 2 of them to us.
And it has been a long time since, we generally try to bring these to you about every 1.5 to 2 years. I don't think we've officially updated the zoning map since 14. So the memo you have that's why it looks like there's so much going on with this, because it's just been 5 years of operating as a community. We've got special uses that have expired within that 5 years, so those tags need to come off. There have been properties acquired by various government agencies over the past 5 years that need to be shown as being zoned differently. There's been a handful of properties that were identified as government that have either been purchased private sector, or a couple of them may have just simply been missed years ago that we're asking, and we've given you all those in the memo. And then there was one property off of Johnson Drive, Lexington Road, that it was rezoned back in, this goes all the way back into the 80s, or early 90s, to commercial general it was just prior to unification by the old county commission. And it looks like at some point when we did comprehensive rezoning in 2000, just 2 little bitty pieces. We've looked back, we can't find any intent to change the zoning of those properties from commercial back to residential, given where they were. I think it just occurred as part of the overall map amendment process, but we did not feel like that was something could be considered a Scrivener's error, given that it's lived on a map for 20 years. So it's going through the official zoning change as recommended by us, and there are the proper ads that have been posted and run for just those 2 little pieces to put them back the way they were rezoned back in the late 80s. But other than that, it's the standard map amendment that incorporates all of the activity that you all have approved in the past 5 years onto a new map, and then we just keep moving.
Any questions about these changes to our zoning map? I'm sorry, I need to take public input. Any member of the public like to comment regarding these changes to our zoning map? Mr. Porter says no. So we're going to move on to commission comment. All right, we're moving on to item number 30, the update to the official environmental areas map.
Okay. It's the same thing, a little bit different with environmental areas. This is something that we normally don't do on a regular basis, although we didn't do that very regular either this time. But occasionally we need to bring our environmental areas map through and update it based on updated federal information. We have new floodplain maps, and we have new wetland inventories. So we've incorporated those, and that's the map you see on the right. It also does a couple things. It removes 500-year floodplains that had shown up on that map because we don't regulate those floodplain areas anyway. It also removed the buffers off of all federal, state, and Clarke County School District properties simply because they're not required to follow those. The local buffers, they're not required to follow anyway. But other than that, it's just a little modification to protect the stream definition, but just housekeeping really more than anything to keep it up to date with current information.
Will we take public input? Any public input on this item? All right, seeing none, Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, looks good. Can we get a PDF of the floodplains and of the zoning map, just just to have on file, because I'm not showing it in my agenda.
Or is it online? Can we access it?
It'll be online, but we can certainly, yeah,
Okay.
we can
Send
get
the
you
link.
something.
Make sure Gene can put it in the portal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, so 4 years ago, we had a conversation about environmental areas and our buffers. Is this map incorporate, the state took away the buffers.
Took
and
away
so
the wet plain
the-
buffers.
So.
The wetland
The
buffers.
wetlands, the wetland buffers. So does this updated map have any relevance to that, or can we still go back and renew that discussion about our wetland buffers? Would this preclude us from doing that? Okay, so this is just telling you where the areas are, and we could restart that conversation if we wanted to.
I don't think at the local level it would preclude the conversation being had again.
Okay.
And certainly not, it may then, at that point, if there was further work done down the road, involve us amending this map again to modify and show something. But we do that all the time.
Any other comment on this side?
Sounds good.
All right, so this concludes the agenda-setting meeting. We have executive session for a couple of items. So we'll thank members of the public for coming out tonight.
I'm picking up my butterfly.